Welcome back to the home studio and welcome to episode 17 of the Stevie Richards Show. I'm calling this particular episode video games, but my co-host, who is definitely one of the most grizzled 30 somethings, he said he's 30 something, it looks like a 20 something. My co-host James dares to call it computer games, which makes him sound even more grizzled and older. Why are you doing the Grandpa Simpson, like punching clouds in the sky, yelling at them?
Yeah, I'm nearly 40. This is really bumming me out. I think my 40s are going to be great, though. Anyway, the point, hello, I'm James. Yes, I call them computer games because that is the English way of calling them. And if it is good enough for Peter Molyneux, then it's good enough for me. You a Peter Molyneux fan?
I don't even know who that is. So there we are.
Okay, then.
You're going to be now.
That's fine. Oh, Jesus, right. Oh, I'll tell you about it later. Anyway, we'll do the intro first. Yeah, we're going to be talking about games, computer games, video games, however you want to call them, Stevie's appearances in games, and we're going to do the plugs first, really, and I've got 2 books, yada, yada, yada. You don't need to know that. Cameo, Stevie Richards is on, of course. The other YouTube channels, like the fitness YouTube channel, the links are all in the Stevie Richards, in like the main page of it, for goodness sake, the homepage that I encourage you all to go to. But most importantly of all, the Patreon. How's that going?
It's going great. It's going great. People are really enjoying we did a pre-production call before we start recording. We're going to do a post-show as well. Chris, our editor, that you're very mean to sometimes, by the way. I have to step in once in a while.
Treat me.
Chris.
Treat me and keep him keen.
Chris, we had a production call yesterday talking about the ticker, which you're going to see hopefully on this episode, which will be like pop-up fact. Can I say it? My God, Philly accent, big new record. Pop-up facts, other things, or even stuff that needs to be corrected in post. For example, when I was talking about the double dog collar match in episode 16, I was wrong. It was the super duper bomb, but I obviously got a concussion and forgot from it because the Pitbulls and 911 put me on top of Raven's shoulders. And I will say this, I was about to tumble over to the right. You could see in the video, Raven hooks my leg before we go back. And this was, we had an episode or a clip, Secrets of the Ring. It's no secret that the ECW ring had bolts and screws and holes in it and boards up. So I looked back like that. I was like, oh my God, this is going to hurt so bad. But it was a good finish, and check it out. It's on YouTube. Double dog collar match, September 1995. 2 out of 3 falls. The Pitbulls won the tag titles that night.
We talked about it in the ECW episode to a point, didn't we?
A little bit more so. We talked about the blading clip and how I did that there, and Paul was like, stop. But I was in the back because I wasn't proficient at it. So we did a storyline basically, or an angle where Buell said I broke my arm the night before, which was a lie, which I didn't want her to say because I was saying my arm probably will get broken during this match. So I was getting jinxed. And then Gary, one of the Pitbulls, went back to get me as Anthony and Raven fought in the ring. And then you see me coming out of the curtain already bleeding.
Gary's the one who put his hands up for that chair shot, right?
That is Gary. You need to ask him about that.
Next time I see Gary, I will definitely mention it.
He's a good dude. We have no ill will about that or anything. It was just funny. And there's people, Raven had told me a long time ago, I think Gary mentioned it, that, man, they still bring that up. That I put my hand, well, you guys were killing me with unprotected chair shots for like 3 months. So, I'm going to put your hand. He's smarter than anybody. Put your hands up. Come on, man.
Speaking of things that go right and go wrong in wrestling occasionally, we're going to do a couple of bits of news. One on WWE, one on AEW. So I think this is sort of my influence, I guess, on the Stevie Richards shows. I always like to come up with 1 or 2 things, up to date and nice and current and everything like that. And something I want to mention is something on WWE Raw. This is Rhea Ripley getting confronted by Liv Morgan and Raquel Rodriguez. Now, Rhea Ripley and Tiffany Stratton were in the ring, having a chit-chat, I guess. And then a couple of different bumps. One of them almost went wrong, and then one of them went completely wrong during a bit of a skirmish. And this is our segment, What Went Wrong. So, Stevie, bring the video up and tell us what went wrong.
So James, you're very happy that I'm a complete nerd and geek, and now you can see the screen, and we don't have to do separate things. You make pretend or watch it and try to remember. So this is the clip you sent me from the end of Raw, from this past Raw, October 14th, 2024. And what we have going on here is first they're going to face off, but at that first bump I thought was the what went wrong bump here that we're going to play. So basically the shove, I think they shoved back and forth here. No, the shove there. Oh, I thought she blew her right there. Right here. Comes down right there. I thought right there, her knee. Right here. I thought that got blown out. Is that kind of what you thought went wrong at first with that?
No,
Because it really,
I knew there was something related to a shoe before I saw it. I hadn't even noticed
yeah.
this beforehand.
But man, you're talking about that knee. I mean, it doesn't take a lot. She could have really even tore an MCL, not even just the ACL, but tore an MCL, PCL, LC. She could have not hyperextended, but she could have strained those ligaments as well. Yeah, that was what I thought was going to be that, but that's an ugly bump. This is part of the ring positioning part right here. Why are you tackling somebody where their head can hit that turnbuckle right there? Why are you going to do it like that's how, at least throughout the urban legend of wrestling, Tommy Young, the referee from the NWA, who used to jump over and count left-handed, he supposedly, got bumped and hit his neck on this bottom rope right here, one of these bottom ropes. So to even not do this, there's too many people in the ring. There's too much going on. But thank God, hopefully she's okay. But then we're going to go to the bump right here. It was off a boot, right?
It
Right
was,
here.
yeah. Well, just before we get to that, there was one other bump just before the Raquel Rodriguez hit on Tiffany Stratton. And I don't quite know what she was going for. I don't know if it was going to like the Tejana Slam or whatever it was, but it sort of ends up getting changed almost midair because there's so much plunder in the ring.
Yeah, I'm looking at it right here. First of all, this is completely reversed. She's grabbing her from basically over her right arm here instead of like a belly to back. You're going to put that arm, the left arm, around your head and then pick her up. I think she was trying to give her a face bump, but man, maybe there's a whole lot of rushing going on right here. There's a lot of hurrying up. So there's this going on, and this is another thing too. Just before we get into it, you have two different sets. That's not the shot I wanted, but there we go. You got two different sets of things going on. So you got one back here, two here. Where does the focus go to if you're an audience member or somebody watching TV? There's no cadence or there's no kind of rhythm to this. Now, this is more egregious if, say, people are fighting all over the building. You have to have one thing happen and the other people are kind of brawling and doing a little bit of nothing. Because if you're both doing something impactful, the cameras are going to miss something. The people are going to miss something. And that's kind of what happened here. But yeah, she looked like, I don't know if she was trying to give her, like she's behind her, but it looks like she has her hooked for like a rock bottom, like around here in front, and then just throws her. And by the way, coming down that hard on the mat without knee pads or without any protection, it's eventually going to hurt your knees. So I don't know what this was supposed to be. I would have sold both my knees and my hip, not my stomach on that. But then we're going to get in this. This is why you sent me this clip. So this is good. She threw her here. She created the space for the big boot. So that was smart. Now everybody's cleared out. Now this boot here, which was a really good cut on the action. Boom. And there is the shoe. I'll say this though, dude, she's lucky the shoe wasn't upside down with the heel sticking up. There it is right there. What James is talking about is this shoe right here. And then her landing on the shoe. And to me, I just want to guess that she's not experienced enough to say, oh, I hit something, unless she thinks she hit the microphone or something else that was harder than a shoe. It looks really good, and she sells right there. So she's selling her head, which is good. She's not selling her leg, which I thought she blew out her knee right there. It even continues to sell. That's a great sell, which leads me to believe that it hurt. Like that's a really good sell from somebody with a lot of experience. And I'm not putting it on her or anybody else, but if you see the beginning of this, it was all about action and just getting to the spot and getting to the spot, and doing the thing. And people started to literally fall on top of each other. So this, I think, did like make her feel like, oh man, like got hit in the back of your head with something really hard. And look at the shoe didn't really sell, right? The shoe didn't sell at all. It stayed right there and then kind of popped off to the side. But on the bump, it stayed right where it was supposed to stay. What are the odds? The only thing I think would be worse than this if Rhea bumped on the briefcase. That would have hurt pretty good. So yeah, I mean, I'm glad everybody hopefully is okay. You said that she put something out on social media where she basically joked about it.
I'll get to that in a minute, though, because Rhea Ripley did have a response to some fans on Twitter, and she posted something on her Instagram. But I'll get to that in a minute.
Do that, by the way. Why do they do that?
What, sad sack
Are you
oddballs?
responding the fans on Twitter when it just like the social media stuff and everybody destroying their own mystique with everything, and especially like when she was with Dom on TV as a couple, she's posting on the other end that she's getting engaged and married to Buddy Matthews and like killing the entire kind of suspension of disbelief. I know everybody has lives outside and whatever, and like I'm glad it wasn't so pronounced and prominent when I was say doing the right to censor, because I probably would have been tempted to be like, I try to be a good guy outside. I'm not really such a bad dude. You know what I mean? Social media not being so prominent helped me still have people comment in 2024 that, oh my God, I hated you so much. And even up until this show, I hated you. But now I finally seen the other side of what you're really like. That's what I think hurts all the talent.
Dominic Mysterio is also, I think, engaged to a woman who's got nothing to do with wrestling. And, you can argue that it's not just Rhea, it's mostly everybody.
Well, who would you say? I mean, we talked about him last week. It looks like I took a toolbox shot right here to the head just for sympathy. Drew's the only one using social media in the way it should be used.
Mm-hmm.
That should be an example. Now, Drew does show they did a thing where they brought him a sword at the restaurant for the big deal that he signed and everything. He was with his wife, but he didn't say, well, actually, I'm not a jerk and I didn't pray for Punk to get hurt and I didn't do this and that. He is doing everything on social media with no disclaimer, no apologies, no confusion on who the real Drew McIntyre is. And dare I say it, he's actually more over as a babyface on social media for being creative.
On that basis, though, Drew isn't portraying himself as being in a relationship on screen with any of the women or men or anyone in that sense. But so, him having a wife in real life doesn't sort of affect his on-screen character where, it's all a love triangle with Rhea and Dominic and Liv Morgan. So in that sense, I don't know. But at this point, I think it's just happened so many times now that I think fans just get desensitized to... or don't expect professional wrestlers to carry their character into their private lives.
Well, that's on the business end. So basically the fans are already, first of all, not taking the wrestling seriously, not taking this kind of dangerous stuff seriously. Then we could talk about last week where they're not taking the blood seriously or any of that stuff. I mean, you can go down a slippery slope of, okay, they're desensitized to that. So why are you even trying anymore then? If you're giving me two different things, and it used to be a thing where right down to tattoos, if you got a tattoo without getting it cleared with the office, to be like, would you change your entire look? And now all the marketing and everything, and that's what social media is, marketing you as a talent, as a character. So you're actually doing stuff to destroy your own character. And the time and the money that's invested in you and that you invest in even getting to that point in your career, don't you want to maximize that and create the mystique is the only thing that wrestling to even this degree has left in it, and they destroy it every time on social media.
I do want to get to something else. We might as well stick with the social media now we've been speaking to. So Rhea Ripley sort of exposed some Slimeball fans basically mocking Rhea and basically saying, I hope she's hurt in real life, which I'll never understand. Are these just straight up marks? Are these just nasty people? Are these just trolls trying to get a reaction? We don't know. But here's an example. Yeah, I saw that. I hope it's an injury. Another quote, the way the shoe was there makes me laugh. That was awesome, etc., etc. And then Rhea Ripley on Instagram took screenshots of these and put, but I'm the bad person, literally wishing for me to get hurt and laughing about it. Maybe some of y'all should look in the mirror.
Well, I mean, think everybody in entertainment and sports is going to have those kind of people that say things just for a rise, just to get a response, by the way, which is exactly what she gave them. Dude, I got after the spine infection and even up until today, I'll get an email or a message when I was on social media saying, I wish you died from the spine infection. You're just a jobber because I lost fake matches. I deserve to, even doing this show and still being alive offends some people. I get that all the time. When you lose fake match, your value as a human being is determined by your push. Now, in Rhea's case, it's a little bit different. I think it's more people trying to be contrarian and trying to just be just jerks and get a rise out of her and get her to respond, because in the past, she has replied and responded like a lot of people do on TV today. It's freedom of speech, but in the end, come on. I mean, this is all like supposed to be, I guess, fun or whatever. But I still get it. I still get it no matter what. And when you give an opinion, like even the video games, if I say I didn't like a video game that somebody thought was the best video game ever, they'll probably wish death on me. And that's cool. Mm. If it keeps going away, if I get another spine infection, you might get your wish. So
hey, as long as you keep commenting and affecting the algorithm, then we'll take it.
The last episode, I put up a thing saying do a friendly roast. So this week, someone put up Stevie's pinned more comments than wrestlers, and I laughed. My wife and I both laughed about that. I loved it. Well, who cares, right?
That's a good joke.
That's a great, like, it's going to get pinned. And Chris, you can put it up and test the ticker out right now with the username and the person and they'll have to comment. But yeah, I mean, it's going to happen anyway. Dude, think about football. I was a Philadelphia Eagles fan. I still am. Dallas Cowboys come to town. People are throwing eggs at the bus. People are threatening their life. People in Philly threw snowballs at Santa Claus. They cheered when Michael Irvin got stretchered out. It's just, what's fan short for?
Fanatic.
You get the raw energy. You want to exhibit the raw. It's funny too, because when she was a heel, people are probably loving her. Now she's a baby face. There's a certain element or a certain demographic that doesn't like that. So what I would tell her to do is do what took me a very long time to do as well. Realize, like you said, the comments, the interaction, all that stuff. Just build your brand. Not everybody's going to like you. You're lucky if it's a 50-50 thing in 2024. We're lucky if 50% of the people like what we do, and then hopefully some percentage of the 50 that hate us watch the show. That's just the way it is.
Going back onto the sort of fracas, the battle on Raw that saw Rhea end up with the back of her head hitting that shoe. There's two things here. Now, you were sort of pointing out that there were two battles in the ring happening at the same time of sort of almost equal importance, I guess. Not, the two people weren't resting and the other two were doing something. But also, with the amount of stuff in the ring, and I don't know if you've ever encountered this in your career, there was the suitcase, the Money in the Bank briefcase, there were two shoes, there was the microphone, and there was the title belt. Is this just a mark of an experience to have that much stuff on the canvas? And also, in your career, have you ever sort of been confronted with a load of plunder in the middle of the ring that you sort of had to navigate around or kick out or whatever to ensure your safety?
Yeah, I mean, this was a lot of stuff, a lot of plunder, as you say, and that paired with two things going on. Now, let's break down right now what could have done better as far as just the people in the ring. You want one pair of people that are fighting standing. You want the other people peeled off in the corner and somebody stomping, choking, just trying to work and look busy while the stuff's going. Then when that happens in the middle, then the people come up, the two that were down in the corner, and the next spot occurs. Now, as far as the plunder, see, I always tried to have myself, especially as a heel, or if I was doing the hardcore stuff as a babyface, to have the person that was a heel, I would say, before we take any kind of bumps, hit me with something, do whatever, then clear everything out of the ring and say, no, no, no. Like, we're not doing any hardcore stuff. That way, when it gets reintroduced by the babyface, they go outside and bring it back in. The heel's trying to get it. I did a spot with Bradshaw. It was on Heat. I think it was on Heat, I believe. He was throwing stuff into the ring. And as he threw it, I threw the stuff outside the other side until I was laughing, had my back, and he hit me from behind with a trash can lid. So psychology-wise, somebody should have been clearing everything out. Maybe live like if the heels were getting on the baby faces first, or the baby faces were getting on the heels, then the heels got on the baby faces a little bit. One of the heels could have been clearing stuff out, or as they're crawling, just pushing the briefcase out of the ring and doing whatever they could. There's a way to do it. Even the referee doing it would be too much like an AEW type thing. 1, 2, tap him on the shoulder to kick out.
You saw that awesome. Then, did you?
I saw that. That was great. Hey, good job on the cameraman catching everything. But you have to be, I would err on just somebody kicking the stuff out of the way rather than leaving it there to have somebody get hurt unnecessarily. You just got to measure what the thing is. But in the beginning of what I talked about, you can't have 4 people all fighting in a little closed area at the same level and then expect the people to be paying attention. It ended up okay with the boot, and thank God she's not hurt, but you need to clean it up. It was just too much of a cluster for anybody to understand.
Now we're going to move on to our next bit of news. So Adam Cole has returned, someone you have wrestled as well in Ring of Honor. So Adam Cole returned to interrupt a beatdown by MJF on Daniel Garcia, who's also recently re-signed. But now Adam Cole, who's been gone for an entire year, he did turn back up very briefly in May just to get beaten up by MJF, but I'll explain that in a second. He was revealed to be the devil, along with his henchmen Roderick Strong, Matt Taven, Mike Bennett, for God's sake, I've written Matt for some reason, and Wardlow, who had been tormenting then babyface AEW champion MJF throughout the autumn. So this was all at the end of 2023, of course, but the issue was that Adam Cole shattered his ankle in a freak accident jumping off an entrance ramp. Do you remember seeing that? Was that when you were still doing the analysis?
I did see it. Yeah, I did see it. I don't know if I did a video on it, but yeah, it was just a freak thing.
Yeah. That was on the same, if I'm memory serving me right, was that the same episode as the John Moxley video that you did do in the concussions?
It was right around there. Yeah. I mean, it was kind of a lot going on in the company in that 1 to 2 week kind of thing.
So that being said, Adam Cole was on crutches for many months. Anyway, the point is that he ends up being revealed as the devil, and then he's going to be the biggest heel in the company, and then it's going to be Adam Cole and MJF as the babyface facing off, and then Adam Cole goes because he can't do anything, and then MJF disappears after he loses the AEW World title to, I think, it wasn't Swerve, was it Samoa Joe who he lost to?
I think it was Joe, and then Joe lost it to Swerve.
Yeah.
If I remember correctly.
So MJF goes.
Where is Joe still there?
He was filming, isn't he filming a TV show? Like Twisted Metal or something like that.
It's a Metal the movie, right? Was that a movie or a TV show?
I thought it was a series, but maybe I'm just going crazy here because I said that the remake of the Patrick Swayze film, Roadhouse.
Oh, Roadhouse was terrible.
Oh, the new one.
Yeah, the one with Jake Gyllenhaal.
Yeah, I didn't see it. I thought that was a series for some reason. I got it wrong. Give us your review of that film because I never bothered with it.
I'll tell everybody, one of my favorite channels is Space Ice. He always talks about Steven Seagal, Neil Breen. Watch a Neil Breen movie. It'll change your life, probably for the worst. but he did the Roadhouse review too because it was so bad, but he made it funny. So it's just bad. You can't. I mean, Roadhouse was just kind of like that popcorn movie. This was just all out nothing. At least Roadhouse had some sort of meaning to it, but hey, if you want to wonder why Conor McGregor is not in Hollywood right now, watch that movie.
Yeah.
It's
Did you
his
see that?
acting
Did
is-
you see that one interview that he did afterwards to promote it? He was so coked out.
Well, he might have been for this movie too, allegedly. So we have to
Allegedly.
be careful.
Oh God, no! You
Like,
should see his
he's-
face. He's got the bloat. He's got the sweats going on. That's why they only did one interview to promote the film that day. They did one, and they thought, we can't have you do any more now, Connor. You need to go.
Yeah, well, nothing could save that movie. So you want to watch Space Ice for 10, 15 minutes. It'll keep you up to speed on it. But yeah, the Twisted Metal one, I don't know if it's a TV show or a movie, but good for Joe. But getting back to the Adam Cole thing, is this going to be in the territory? Because when we talked about Swerve and Page, the 1 year angle, off on again angle, and then people kind of said, well, no, they were dipping in and out and they kept it interweaved and all this stuff. Do you think that's going to be the same excuse for what we're about to talk about? How the stop start, now they flipped they did supposedly the Austin Brett double turn type thing where MJF's the heel and Adam Cole's the babyface.
Yeah, but
And
that
we're
wasn't in the
supposed
same match,
yeah.
though.
We're supposed to forget that he was the devil and supposedly the biggest heel in the company, and now he came back as a babyface.
Do you remember back in May, right? So MJF and Adam Cole basically turned back up on, I can't remember which pay-per-view it was. I've written it down somewhere. I'd not written it down anyway, I'm sorry. Anyway, it's back in May on a pay-per-view, and MJF does a surprise turn and basically beats up Adam Cole, who has the devil mask, and then gets rid of Adam Cole within 10 seconds, basically. Beats him up, shuffles him out the ring. Then it's the one where he's wearing the Triple H 2002 return jacket.
Yeah.
And he does like an 8-minute promo into the camera and basically just erases the devil storyline, but just completely. It's just gone. And now then MJF returns properly, and then shortly thereafterwards he turns on Daniel Garcia for just some sort of reason. And then he's now heel, and then Adam Cole turns back up, who is just now a babyface. And it's one of those things where, as you say, Adam Page, Stuart Strickland, you can't quite tell why anyone's turned or really what the motivations are at this point.
No. And I used the analogy back in the day when I was a kid that Paul Orndorff did more than one turn within a 2 or 3 year thing. And you thought he was stale at that point because you didn't know whether to cheer or boo for him. And this is real or boo at him. So this is just that turned all the way up. So I don't understand. Like the basis, I don't have to explain it to anyone. We have a basic fundamentals of a wrestling match up on episode 15. You got to boo or cheer somebody, but you also have to feel like your emotions and the emotions that are elicited out mean something. Like literally, if I have to boo and then cheer and then boo, then cheer, then boo, then cheer, it's almost like you're being played. You're strung along, and your emotions that you're trying to give into the product and the characters, one way or the other, is being tossed aside, or you're almost being mocked for doing it. Do you kind of get that impression? I know that's not what they mean to do, but perception is the reality of it all. And that's why I feel like now AEW is in a tough spot. Even WWE to a point is also in a little bit of a tough spot where, all right, if I can't cheer or boo, I'm just going to sit back and watch. And that's the worst thing. Just being quiet. Like, what am I supposed to? Let me just sit back and watch. Oh, these are cool moves. That's all I got.
At least with MJF and Adam Cole, at least there's like a clear babyface and a clear heel. It's just the reasons for them being babyface and heel don't really add up. But at least you know who to cheer and boo in this one. Whereas with Adam Page and Swerve Strickland, they are both presented as bad guys and shades of grey. So they're almost equal at that point.
I can't tell you. And it's a sports style presentation. And like we talked about in the last episode, not trying to beat up AEW. And I said, WWE, we can't let them have a pass for some of the things that they do as well. But at least at least I know if Drew McIntyre is a heel, we're at least going to get a good 6 months to a year of Drew McIntyre steadily and consistently being a heel. Not like, this is the thing in wrestling, and it's more so in AEW. And I said this, I think, last week. They almost now, instead of spoon feeding and letting you know and telling you and kind of setting the table, as bookers would say, oh, it's Adam Cole. He's back. You should know he's a babyface. MJF's in the ring. He's being heel. So you should know Adam Cole's a babyface. We're very excited, even though 6 months ago we were calling him a son of a bitch for, being the devil. So,
but he's a babyface by virtue of the fans didn't know he was going to be there, and it was a surprise.
That's right, because he's a surprise. So therefore, everybody should be happy to see him. These assumptions, and I said it also, the ego not only of the wrestlers, but in this case, the creative team, to assume, and we all know what happens when you assume, you make an ass out of you and me. So you assume that. And then the fans will let you know that, well, you shouldn't have assumed that. You should have told us something. You should have did whatever. And does it do Adam Cole a disservice to not have a proper amount of vignettes and other things to come back and build to the point where what's going to happen when he crosses paths with MJF? So much has changed. And they keep asking him. And Adam Cole says, I'll think about that when I get to that. I got to take care of this. I got to get in ring shape. I got to win some matches. I'm back to do that. You could have played it out for at least a month to 6 weeks. That's the mystique and anticipation. And those two elements, mystique and anticipation, are both equally what sells tickets, pay-per-views, and merchandise.
Now, Tony Khan has been claimed via Brian Alvarez that the AEW boss is now booking week to week. And famously, in the late 2010s especially, Vince McMahon was famous for, he's been famous for so many years, screwing up the old format, throwing it away and thinking, oh, we'll just do something else. And, you have to scramble to come up with creative that either does or doesn't make sense, but basically satisfies the boss. And further on in Vince's career as the head of WWE, it seemed even obvious to a fan such as I or anybody else watching that the booking was show to show. And apparently the reason was Vince just thought, well, if I don't remember it, nobody else will remember it. Let's just do something else this week. And there was no integrity of the storyline arcs or characters for the most part. And then there's also... And also, this is sort of why AEW is in existence, because WWE television was so bad in the late 2010s that it gave sort of rise to... There was a gap in the warehouse door for someone to break in and have a second national or international American-based wrestling promotion to sort of go head-to-head with Vince, because so many disenfranchised fans out there wanted something different. They wanted a different presentation, and more importantly, I think, they wanted integrity of storyline and integrity of character, which is what I always harp on about with the MJF heel turn. It sort of just sprang out of nowhere. There wasn't really much motivation behind it. And then now Adam Cole's back, and he's a babyface. Why? Well, because it fits the narrative for this week. There's not a satisfying reason why he's now a babyface, in my mind.
Yeah, I have to totally agree with all that. And yeah, Vince, even recently when he was there, before he left, he was ripping up scripts at 4, 5, 6 p.m. Sometimes as the show was going on, they were writing the show, which was really the death knell in the beginning of the end for WCW, when people would show up late or do whatever or change stuff, or that doesn't work for me, brother, during the show. That's the kind of stuff that kills a company. Yeah, and here's my question at the end. I have one really important, because we had TNA during that time drawing between 1 to 2 million people at, steadily on Impact before they even went live on the Monday experiment. But the MJF thing, the Adam Cole thing, or anything in general, this would be MJF's second or third time as a heel in the company. Very much in Paul Orndorff territory. So you got to stay heel. So when next time he turns babyface, I heard people not saying, well, you're just a prick. Why am I going to like you? And they're going to try to shove him down people's throats as a babyface. The Adam Cole thing. I totally think Adam Cole, even though he gets a reaction, would make a great heel. I think the only thing that can save Adam Cole and MJF right now is if they were kind of stringing the fans along together and they were both to get back together as a team, as a heel team, and now they can play off each other. Because quite honestly, with Adam Cole, if you look at him, and I'm nobody to talk, I don't have great size, but still at the same time, you look at Adam Cole, he doesn't look like he can kick anybody's ass. He's much stronger as a swarmy, smart ass heel that can still work and go, but take shortcuts to compensate for his lack of size, his lack of muscle, his lack of any of that stuff. And also coming back as a heel allows Adam Cole to take less bumps, to not have to, be in a position to get sympathy. And the only time he really has to bump and feed is during the comeback. So it's a little bit more like he can control what he does and doesn't do within a match as a heel. Them two together would protect Adam Cole from getting re-injured. And now you have two people that really hate, and then you can put the belts on them, and now baby faces are chasing them, and people cheer for them to get beat up.
I just want to also mention that, I don't want to pick on AEW too much, because WWE over the course of 15, 20 years have been the kings, the undisputed kings of just fitting someone in for that week, and changing direction on a Big Show. I mean, for goodness sake, what other example do you need than Big Show turning 40 times throughout his career? Yep. And nearly every single one of them was in the WWE. And I always say integrity of character. It was never more well sort of established than when Steve Austin turned heel at WrestleMania 17. He has never been as popular as he was in the late 90s. And that turn made no sense. I know Austin thought he was drying up a bit as a babyface. He wasn't. It just, the booking wasn't as good. And Steve Austin was almost being shunted into the background slightly as compared to what he was. But it was like, that was the biggest mistake of his career, turning heel, because he never quite got the goodwill back that he had at his absolute peak. And it's just purely because it was integrity of character. He lost it. When he turned heel, it made no sense for his character.
Yeah, and then he essentially, with the Alliance stuff, he was entertaining, but he was basically a comedy act, which that's what they were doing with Kurt Angle. So it kind of, strong. It kind of like, blended together too much and glossed over each other. The problem was, and this was the formula Vince had in the 80s with Hogan. He was a monster killer. He was a dragon slayer. But Vince also had to create characters that were monsters to feed to Hogan. They didn't have strong enough heel characters to go up against Austin outside of Taker, Rock. I mean, there's really not many characters. You can count on one hand, maybe. You could Shawn and Brett in there somewhere, but Shawn was already done for a bit by WrestleMania 17. Brett was gone, right?
Oh, yeah.
Because 17 was when the WCW wrestlers were supposed to show up at the pay-per-view, correct? Or was that 19?
No, 17's 2001, and they did. And there was just basically all the guys who weren't big enough to be contracted directly with Turner Broadcasting and had contracts with WCW.
Had no contracts, like Goldberg and Sting and all those guys. And of course, everybody was looking back, obviously saying, well, they knew the creative had lapsed because before the Austin stuff happened. And the people that really counted were probably like, I don't know if I want to come back to this, and I have a no-cut contract with guaranteed money. Why would anybody want to do that?
So, that being said, that's a bit of news that we've discussed. There's nothing else that we want to talk about. I think we should talk about Adam Cole and what he's like to wrestle at a different time, because, as I say always for a future episode, take a shot. Every single time I say it.
I do want to say this about Adam. I've always got along great with him. He's always been very respectful. He's always been very cool. And when I say the things I say, as people could, interpret that as negative criticism, I'm saying that as what someone else should be saying and thinking about before he even comes back. You did him a disservice, and you did MJF a disservice by just, here he is. Oh my God, he's back. What now? You could have really had them, like, what's going to happen when they cross paths? What's going to happen when they finally get face to face? Those were the things that matches and angles are built on, the anticipation. And they killed it with him. You hit the music, you got to pop. The people already paid their tickets and are already in the building. Those weren't the people you were supposed to like make interested. They were already interested. It was the people that weren't there.
Aren't surprises for the most part just they just work against you? You know, surprise unless maybe you're promoting in advance a surprise tag team partner or something, or a surprise opponent. If you just have a surprise, and here's another old reference for you, when James Brown just turned up on a WCW pay-per-view with no prior warning to dance with Ernest the Cat Miller.
Yeah. He was probably just driving by and said, "Oh, there's wrestling." But yeah, and even the mystery opponent, mystery tag team partner, you still run the risk of not drawing the house based on that. Now, the event's the most popular event that they do it right each and every year, the Royal Rumble. You know now you're conditioned. You're going to get at least 2 to 3 major like surprise entrants. It works then because the gimmick is, all right, I'm going to see something. Let me watch the Rumble. And of course, the winner of the Rumble goes on to WrestleMania. So there's stakes within a regular battle royal. But just the surprises, the pops, that's all ego-driven creative for on any level. You got to watch it. You have to watch it, and you have to talk yourself out of why you think it's a good idea. And I don't think anybody does that.
A very, very often requested topic. Ever since we started the show, and probably way before that, quite frankly, Stevie wanting to start a gaming channel. I've suggested that. I think you've probably thought about it as well, a good old-fashioned gaming channel. I think a lot of people will be interested. But for this one, we're going to be talking about the games, your sort of journey into becoming a gamer. And briefly, what's your history of games? What's your first console? What's any of the early games that you really enjoyed? The genres that you're interested in? All that kind of good stuff. Not just wrestling, but your first forays and what first got you interested in the medium.
I think the first video game from anybody in my era was an Atari 2600. Very easy. And then obviously they got bastardized into the 5200, then the 7800 Odyssey. It was a bunch of different things like that. After that was in television, ColecoVision. And I've always been a big sports fan as far as video games. Then, of course, it was the Genesis and Super Nintendo, obviously the Nintendo Entertainment System. Blow on the cartridge when it doesn't work, blow inside the thing. And I can't remember how many times I've done that. But also there's wrestling games, and we're going to have a list of the top and the worst 5 wrestling games, in my opinion, that I've played. Doesn't necessarily have to be ones I've been in, and you'll see that with the list. But I remember Nintendo Duck Hunt, Super Mario. Who hasn't played a Mario type game in any generation, even leading up now with the Nintendo Switch? I even looked on Wikipedia for wrestling games. I could not imagine. I missed a lot. I have to, just based on this list alone, I could probably start a gaming channel basically on wrestling. But we're looking at some of the Nintendo games. I remember I really liked this game on Nintendo in 1989. It came out. Then I replayed it and was so terrible. WCW Wrestling. It was the 3/4 like Diablo type shot, and the turnbuckle was at the top, and you had to do moves and stuff. The only thing I remember that was innovative, and one of my favorite games on the list I'll talk about it in a minute. It had the 1, 2, and then it had the fractional count. So you got a 2.99, a 2.95, 2.75 on there with the game. But the game was absolutely terrible. But I didn't know there was also on Game Boy WCW The Main Event, then WCW Super Brawl Wrestling. And then, of course, we get into the N64 world and all that stuff. And, of course, WWE had, man, I don't know why this is under WWE, but I do remember playing Micro League Wrestling on the Amiga and the Commodore 64 back in 1987. I remember playing WWF WrestleMania in 89 on Nintendo. And then, of course, the arcade games. Who could beat WrestleFest for the time? I spent a lot of quarters on WrestleFest. So that was the start. You know, you're talking about like for Super NES, Super Bases Loaded was probably my favorite sports game on that system. NHL 94 on Genesis, remember? You could hit the guy and then the blood, you just skate
I
over
had the
him.
original. I had NHL 90, and it was packed with Madden, and I think that was the original Madden. And you call it Genesis. Everywhere else in the world, it's the Mega Drive. So I had that on the Mega Drive I think it was released in 1990. But yeah, you could do the same punching and stuff like that. And that was a great game, the NHL games.
Hey, for anybody that thinks like, you're a Madden aficionado, or for me, it's ESPN NFL 2K5 is the best football game ever made. I still have an affinity for the first football game or the first sports game in general that had commentary. Joe Montana Sports Talk Football on Genesis. You remember that one?
No, we never got that. Or maybe we did. I've never heard of it.
It was technically, if I can remember correctly, it was the first football game available on a console. Madden came after that, but Joe Montana Sports Talk Football, I remember, oh my God, they're talking. And it was, the graphics and all this stuff were great for the time, but they weren't anything to write home about. But the wrestling games, I didn't get into the wrestling games until I decided probably, when I was in high school, probably right around, I would say probably right before graduation when WCW wrestling came out in 89. I graduated from high school in 89, last century, everybody. And
last millennium.
And last millennium. Thank you for making me feel even older. I appreciate that. But do your ha.
Nope.
But yeah, you refuse. You're so better and grizzled.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
All Japan Wrestling came out with a game in 93. Like, these are games I want to go back and get the emulators for the Steam Deck and play them. So like, it's just so many games right there. But yeah, I've always been a huge video game fan in general. And then of course, it goes without saying, you get into the business, you want to be a pro wrestler. WrestleMania is great. But for me, it was always video games and action figures. And we will have, I'll let you say it so everybody can take a shot. What do we have coming up for the action figures?
A future episode, we're going to be talking about the figures and all the different kinds of merchandise. I want to tell you, guess what my first console was? And you mentioned it before, an Intellivision. From, I think they came in like 79 or 80. So we had, when I was born, so I was born in 86, we had an Intellivision, and we had a Commodore 16 plus 4, because that was the European crappier version of the Commodore 64 that we had. And that was one of those ones where they were on tape, you had to put the tape in, and then you had to play it, and then you had to actually type out the word load, and then you would have to wait for, I promise you, on certain games, up to 10 minutes for it to actually load up. And what was even worse is our Commodore 16 plus 4, the O stopped working. So all you could type was lad. So we had to end up taking the key off and then sort of stabbing it with like a knitting needle to make the O work. Tell you. And then we ended up getting the Mega Drive. And then here's the thing, right? So we totally missed the NES. I know Americans, right? They all call it Nintendo Entertainment System. We just call it fucking NES. And then the Super Nintendo is SNES. It's NES and SNES. It takes half a week to get the full title out, so it's NES and SNES. We never had a NES, but we did have the SNES. So from there on, and then I've had every console.
You're talking about a floppy disk for all the young people out there. You used a floppy disk for the Commodore, right?
No. For the Commodore, it was cassette tape.
Oh, I mean, we had a floppy. They had an additional floppy thing. I remember I used to play like Karate Fighter or Kung Fu something on that, Kung Fu Fighter or Kung Fu Master. I do have a story. I didn't put this in the notes. I do have a story, an early story, since I talked about it last week with the cane that walked down Center City, Philadelphia. So Gabe Sapolsky, who ran Evolve and Ring of Honor, him and I were in the ticket office above in Carver W. Reed, 8th and Sampson, or 10th and Sampson. I'm not sure. It's been so long.
You should explain, because you mentioned that last week as well, but we should explain that is Todd Gordon, the founder of ECW's business, pawn shop.
His pawn shop, yes. His pawn shop. And there was an office above. There was an attic, but turned into an office. Gabe and I had desks, had phones, took ticket orders, all that stuff. But you talk about Super Nintendo or SNES. we had the Super Famicom,
Ooh,
which was
the
the
Japanese
Japanese
version.
version. So we can play Fire Pro Wrestling. Before it was called Fire Pro Wrestling, it was called Six Man Scramble, which I had on the Super Famicom and also had on the Sega Saturn. And I also had a Philips 3DO. Remember that? These
No,
were
oh,
the
it's like a big VCR looking thing, wasn't it? It was
yeah,
like
the
$800.
Saturn, the Saturn and the Philips 3DO were both two of the first disc-based systems, and were cartridge-based or floppy or tape-based. These were the first two, I believe, discs-based. And this might have been around the time or just before the PlayStation 1 came out. But we used to have to, and then as time went on, I got the Game Shark adapter to be able to play Six Man Scramble on a standard SNES, as you would say, or Super NES. But man, Six Man Scramble opened up my world to the customization and creating your own wrestler and the move set and the outfits, and it's just gotten so much better. And we're going to get into big spoiler about Fire Pro, an amazing game. So that was kind of my way to put me in the game and put the guys in the game back in the day. Gabe and I would play that all the time. And then, of course, it graduated to the PlayStation series, the Microsoft Xbox, all that stuff.
You just broke a memory for me. I had one dodgy cartridge for the Super Nintendo, as you would say, and it was Tasmania. And I remember it only worked half the time, and it must have been either an American copy, like a NCIS, well, NS. What the hell is PAL, and what's the other one?
NCSC and your PAL. Yeah. NCSC is honestly, the American read.
I've had no sleep. I can't remember anything at the moment. And yeah, that would only work half the time, but it would work half the time. And I just realised how many Warner Brothers games I had. I had Tiny Toon Adventures, which is a really good platformer that nobody seems to remember, but that was a good platformer. And also Super Smash TV. Did you ever have that?
I did. And also, to speak of WB, on Genesis and Super Nintendo, some of those Batman games still hold up today. Those platform Batman games, pretty good games.
Okay, so I know that everybody basically wants us, or Stevie at least, to talk about wrestling games. He was in 6 WWF/WWE licensed games, and we were just talking off air. We were almost not arguing, but we were trying to figure out what was the first game you were an actual playable character in. So there's actually a story with SmackDown 2 Know Your Role, which you were in the game.
Yeah, I was in the game as a character you encountered in storyline mode. Like, basically, I think you have some potential. It was like a meme. Like, I'm the one telling you have potential. I didn't even have the potential to be in the game as a part of the main roster. So that was the first game I was the character, the right to censor Stephen Richards was a part of. The next one, Just Bring It, I was actually a playable character in the game. So, and back then, now I don't know the way it works now because there's so much more DLC, and there was no DLC back then. It was like, here's the roster. The next game, we could have a new roster. So the royalty checks for that were really good because there were very few spots available, because you're talking about at the time, it's not a Blu-ray disc where you can fit a lot of characters, a lot of music, a lot of different motion graphics and all that stuff in it. So it was pretty limited, even though it was now disc-based as opposed to cartridge-based. But I dare say we get into No Mercy, World Tour from WCW, Revenge from WCW. They have a lot of characters in those games and a lot of music and a lot of weapons. So I don't know how they pulled it off. GoldenEye is another one on cartridge-based, which was like, wow, you fit a lot of stuff into this game. But Just Bring It was basically the first time you could play as Stephen Richards, but I was in story mode. I did not get royalty checks for the story mode character. I did get royalty checks for being on the main roster as a playable character.
But they're using your likeness, though. So, I mean, legally, surely, if you want to take them to court and say, hey, buddy, you use my name that I own the trademark for, you use my likeness that I own the trademark to my own face. That's crazy.
Right, let me counter that. Stephen Richards was their character. I didn't own the rights to that. I didn't even own Stevie Richards until my last contract in 2008. They owned the likeness because they created the character. I look completely different than what you saw Stevie Richards be before that. They trademarked all that stuff. I'm not saying that it would have been nice to get a royalty check, and in a way, Jesse Ventura was the first one to get royalty checks for the boys due to his lawsuit. So, and then they created WWE Network.
Well, that's not exactly strictly true, because there were a few people getting royalties like Hulk Hogan, Mr. T.
Well, yeah, across the board is a fair thing for the roster. That's why there'll never be a union, because somebody's always getting taken care of, either on the forefront or definitely on the down low. They're getting taken care of financially, and they will be the ones to stooge off just before WrestleMania 3. Yes, we got through and can't get through an episode about the Hulk Hogan.
Oh no. WrestleMania 2, by the way.
Actually, the footage of the Raw 2 match you're going to see in a little bit is me versus Hulk Hogan in the Hell in a Cell.
Oh, is it really? Is that the
I did that for you.
I really want to see that now. No, we've got to wait for it. We've got to wait for it. Let's talk about, before we get to the royalties and everything else, who is the person who comes up to you and says, Stevie, we want you to be in a game?
I couldn't really tell you. All I know is that maybe they'll have a clipboard and they'll be like, when they started to scan for action figures and scan for the video games, hey, Stevie, we need you to go here, Jack Specific or whoever is going to scan you. And they wouldn't even say what it was for. Now, you can sure as hell bet when I got into that trailer, usually it was out in California because that's where most of them were based, and they have to bring, like, it looks like a satellite truck, but it's got that whole thing that looks like kind of like a panoramic X-ray, but it goes all the way around you. It was amazing technology for way back then. Even they were way ahead of their time. To get that done was really cool. Ask questions, see how it works. And they were such a good group, just like my friend Pete with the action figures, to get to know these people and to have that. They don't forget how some people just treat them civilly, like don't order them around. Because you can imagine some of the boys feel very entitled and talk, or don't even talk to them because they're just kind of like marks or whatever, where I was just like, I'm a mark for this too. I want to know everything there is to know. And that attitude and really the excitement about being in the game, I believe, put me in 5 more games after they saw, well, this guy at least appreciates it. So now I don't know, just to say, I don't know if, like, Pete got me action figures made because I was sending him stuff on the download, but I don't know if they went to the company and said, we really like to have these people in the game, and I was included at that, or there was a back and forth, or WWE just said, here's the guys, and I just kind of got lucky and got in there.
So did you ever forge any relationships with anyone from THQ or Ukes or anything like that?
That was the other company. I'm sorry, THQ was behind it. The Ukes engine was based on New Japan Pro Wrestling 4, which we have some footage. I don't have footage here, but B-roll Chris. And yeah, THQ, it was THQ, Jack Specific, were all kind of working together in tandem. I don't think they were sharing resources, or because I do remember that, like, the scan machine for the action figures looked almost the same, the trailer, everything. So maybe they were sharing equipment, or maybe they were a conglomerate. Maybe they were the same company, 2 companies underneath one major one. I don't know. Because remember, there was a couple that said THQ/Jack Specific on some of the games, I think, right?
Yeah, I'm looking at the No Mercy one here, and I always remember it being AKI Corporation, because I don't know if it was because of Nintendo 64, it was different.
Hockey was Virtual Pro Wrestling, and that's what No Mercy and WCW were based on, Japanese Virtual Pro Wrestling.
Yeah, with
what license from them to use, like, Ukes engine. I think the WWE licensed it for all those SmackDown and SmackDown versus Raw games.
Just because you mentioned the scans before, how long would a scan take? And did you have to do, like, any other inputs into the games, as far as maybe even suggesting what moves you wanted for yourself, or, you know, suggesting, you know, finishers and signature moves, or the way you walk, anything like that you'd have to, you know, input data or do motion capture or anything like that?
No, I did do a couple rounds of motion capture, like from SmackDown versus Raw, I think 2005 and 2006. I definitely did 2006. I did motion capture for that. But no, the scan just was basically, it was like a 3D scan of your entire face mostly. And then I think the outfits and everything, if you look at some of the game footage, it gets better as you go on, but like just bring it. Everybody's kind of blocky and the same. Some people are taller, but then as you get into it, like SmackDown versus Raw, I'm just like looking at it like, wow. I mean, you got my facial expression, my 5 o'clock shadow, even kind of my body type. That's when they started scanning 3D around you, where you'd stand in. I think the cylinder would close and they would just do the whole thing with that, and then would show up on the computer screen. Then it got into full motion capture where you'd wear, by the way, if you're ever going to do motion capture, wear Under Armour, long sleeves, and pants because it gets itchy as you sweat and take bumps. That's when we had what you saw, like if you watched Lord of the Rings with Gollum, all the dots on the thing and the hell there. That was the pinnacle of capturing the motion of everything.
Did you just have to wear the suits? Because I've seen certain games where they do motion capture, where they want to capture your facial expressions, where you've got like dozens of dots around your face as well to, get every contour and grimace. Did you ever have to have that?
Never had that, because what I was doing motion capture for other wrestlers. So I wasn't in these games that I would, SmackDown versus Raw 2006 I was in, but the ones after that, I think '07 and '08 is the ones I officially did motion capture for other talents, like entrances. Like I did Taker and Kane's entrance and other things. And we had a thing where somebody got ran over by a car. I think it was during that time, like they were recreating the Rikishi Stone Cold thing, to do it to somebody else. And we had crash pads on a piano dolly and ran somebody over with the crash pads. And it was so fun because somebody got a head start on whoever got hit, and they thought it was going to be soft, but that dude flipped up and it's in the game, as they would say with EA Sports.
It's in the game,
which sucks. Totally sucks.
So you're not a big fan of EA then?
Not a big fan of EA. I'm not a big fan of Madden. The same game each and every year. That's why ESPN NFL 2K5 is the greatest football game ever made.
See, it's the same with FIFA over here, man. It's just like there's no point buying the next game because it's just a reskin pretty much of whatever players just happen to be playing for whatever club that year. And that's about it. And then it's £60. And then last year's, it's like 11 months and 29 days old, then drops down to £5. That's
what we do. We wait for it to come out on Game Pass. If you play on Xbox, Madden comes out right after the season. But the thing, EA's business model is microtransactions, is really fleecing everybody on these upgrades and packs and this and that and the other thing. And now the games are $70. Next gen games that still haven't harnessed the power of the original PS4, not the Pro or the PS5 or the PS5. They haven't even done that. Plus, they've cut the games down to be a quarter to maybe generously half the size of previous games, and then the DLC after that. So you're not even paying for a full game.
No. But having said that, if a full game is $70, inflation-wise, 30 years ago, games were, what, $50, $60 30 years ago?
No, they'd be around 40 to 50 max. That's why ESPN NFL 2K5, when it came out in 2004, was so popular. It was a better game than Madden, and it had more features, had the ESPN presentation, and it was $20. That's why EA put all their money into the license so they could just get the monopoly and then just kind of coast.
Just going back on what you said before when you were doing motion capture and doing other people's entrances, would THQ pay you separately? Because this isn't just for your likeness, you're actually doing work for them. So, or would WWE pay you?
Well, I don't remember how I got the check, but basically what it was $500 a day. It used to be 5 days at a time, which I wanted that to be my full-time thing for a while there, because I wanted to politic, because they liked my voice, the new voice, not the old one. And this guy, Ron, who was the director, was like, man, we can use you on some voiceovers for some games and stuff like that. And I was like, this is exciting. $500 a day, and then either 25 or 50. I think it was $50 per diem, which I was doing shakes and bars. So I was essentially getting $550 a day. And then I think that was paid directly from THQ. And the company was good because they could have just said, this goes against your downside or this goes against something. But I think we got paid separately and got checks literally at the end of the week, maybe. They would give us the whole check.
What about WWE then? Were they just happy to just like strike you off the books for a couple of weeks while you were doing work for the game then?
Well, it's usually guys that aren't figured in. And then these times I wasn't figured in. Nova Nova was in talent relations, so obviously that helped me get the motion capture to kind of put it over the top. He had me, had Damian Sandell, Aaron Stevens there. I think Loki was there for one, and then you had a couple of the girls doing the part, for the female wrestlers. But they didn't always do strictly WWE people. There were independent wrestlers that were there as well.
Voiceovers. Did you ever do any voiceovers for wrestling games or any other games then?
No, I wish I could. I mean, I have enough equipment to do voiceovers today, but it's just like we talked about before, 50% could love the voice, 50% could hate it. So, but yeah, voiceover is something I really would love to do. Now, the commentary, I've heard JR and Lawler, it was like sometimes days. I mean, I knew they do it for football where you got to read hundreds, if not thousands of lines over and over and over again. It's pretty amazing how the algorithm or the programming, whatever they're using, can match up to like almost perfectly to what's going on in the ring. It's pretty cool. I know they repeat after a while, but it's still pretty amazing.
Yeah, I was never a great big fan of the commentary on the SmackDown, or just any of the wrestling games really, because it never sounded the same. It's tough to get the emotion involved when you're doing it in a soundproof booth, watching whatever you're watching, if you're watching anything. I always thought the commentary on UFC Undisputed, I think it was that one from 2009, was brilliant with Joe Rogan and Mike Goldberg. That's still the best sports commentary I've ever heard in a game. I don't know if you ever played that, but they had great commentary on that.
Yeah, I played all the UFC games up until like 4. After that, it's kind of the same thing. But yeah, UFC was really good. Also, Fight Night had pretty good commentary on that. I'd love to know the technology. If there's anybody out there that's a video game developer and does any of this, we would love to actually talk to you on the show about that. And if you have any assets or videos or anything that we can B-roll in, that would be incredible.
Oh yeah, it was called UFC. It was 2009 Undisputed. I didn't have the one with Forrest Griffin on. I thought I had Roger Huerta on the front of my cover, and there was like 4 different covers for it, and nobody remembers Roger Huerta anymore, but he was very briefly one of the shining stars of UFC, and then he disappeared. What else I'm going to ask? Okay, let's talk about the royalties. I'm going to talk about more of the games, specifically your work on each one of them, apart from No Mercy, which is its own story. How was pay worked out then, as far as royalties, and would you get any bonuses if the game sold particularly well, anything like that?
Well, no, the royalty was the bonus on top of your downside. And if you make over your downside, just to remind everybody, if you make over your downside, that money, like video games and everything like that, is definitely included as a bonus in a way. You're making more on top of that: merchandise, t-shirts, video games, action figures, all that stuff.
So if you're saying then, let's say you're not wrestling for whatever reason, maybe injury, would all those royalties would just go up to top up your downside guarantee? You wouldn't get it as a bonus?
Officially, but like I said before, sometimes on the down low, people are getting taken care of, and that's treated as a separate source of income. I was one of those people that when I was in video games, I was working and making above not much above, but at least above earning it, meaning I had enough bookings, I had enough TV appearances, pay-per-views. I worked enough to warrant getting paid over my downside. So, and I really wasn't on pay sheets a whole lot. I did that maybe once. And then I said, no, I'm just going to budget for the rest of the year and then do that. That way I know I'm getting paid. If I make more, I get a bonus check at the end, and they earn the interest off the money from keeping it for 11 months. But yeah, I mean, in video games, they're kind of lumped in, but here's the thing. And I know there's a story. There's one wrestler, I don't know, I'm not want to name him, but he complained about his payoff in the video game. He said, this is BS to JR. I should get more. They adjusted it. They gave him more money, and then he wasn't on TV for a couple of months. They're going to get their money back one way or the other. So it's not really a hill to die on. They give you enough to where you're like, this is a good amount of money, but it's probably not what you deserve to get paid for if they really did like audit the books, so to say. It's kind of like, 0.0000 whatever 0.1 of net off the game. And it is lumped in with back then DVDs, VHS, action figures, t-shirts, whatever merchandise, 7-Eleven cups, whatever it might be, you can get a pretty substantial check. But the video game back then, since there wasn't like a 50, 60 person roster most times, and there's really no DLC, so you had a lot more quality over quantity. The check to me would be, unless you had tons of t-shirts like DX or Austin or Rocky, the video game check was the one that talents like me would say, this could be a down payment on my house. This could be like I could buy a lot of stocks and stuff and make good interest. You could really turn your financial situation around just off of the video games.
I was going to ask you about DLC. What do you understand about DLC as far as royalties go with the more modern games?
What I understood, and I don't know if the rules changed now, but it got released August 2008. When DLC was introduced, which I think it was around the time I was there, towards the time I was gone, you do not get a royalty check for DLC. You have to, and that made it more of a competition to get on the main roster one because there was none there. And now with other games, like there was a company that reached out to me and said, you're going to be offered as DLC. And when you get DLC or you're part of the DLC, whatever people pay for that, you get like half, as far as the pack or whatever, we'll split it, which isn't going to be much of anything. That's strictly a courtesy of a independent wrestling game. I think just trying to get guys to be part of the game as some incentive. But as far as I know, WWE to this day, because there's tons of DLC, right? Like NXT, I think one year they had like separate packs of like 50 wrestlers and DLC that were released. And I don't know, do they charge for the DLC? I think they do.
Oh God, yeah. Oh, and here's what they do is, and you'll notice they've got like season passes that you can pay for, and you'll save like, I don't know, the equivalent of like $1. And that's presuming you buy every single DLC release that year.
So my question is, are they giving royalty checks off of DLC? I don't know. They could have changed. I hope they changed it because there's a lot of people that are in DLC now. And if you're not getting paid for it, it's just, hey, it's cool to be in a video game. That's about it.
I remember very clearly I interviewed Heath Slater a couple of years ago, and I asked him the same thing about royalties and games and stuff, and he said over the course of his career in WWE, he went, man, the royalties just kept going down and down and down throughout the years because obviously the company is working out the smallest amount of money that they can give the talent and they still not complain or have like a full-on, full-scale revolt, I guess.
You just keep turning up the boiling pot little by little to see if anyone's going to screw. And that goes doubly in a way. The WWE network completely destroyed royalties on DVDs, Blu-rays, VHS. All that stuff was a pretty decent moneymaker. I think Jesse Ventura's lawsuit was like $909,000. That was based off of Coliseum video and DVDs and stuff like that. So they did that. I don't even know. Like, I think somebody tried to sue for royalties for the network, but you're not getting any money for network stuff.
You were in 6 years worth of games, essentially. No Mercy, SmackDown 2, SmackDown 3, Just Bring It, WWE Raw 2 that was on the Xbox, Here Comes the Pain, and SmackDown versus Raw, the original one in 2006 as well. We'll talk about all those games in a second, but royalty-wise, what paid the best? Was it a sort of even across the board? Did the pay scale change over time?
From what I can remember, I think, for me at least, the one when I was right to censor paid the most. Now they all paid pretty decent, but like Heath said, with each game release and each roster like expansion, with going from a cartridge to a regular CD now to DVD, Blu-ray type of storage, you could fit more wrestlers on there. Now that doesn't mean the guys on the top they have separate deals like Austin, Taker, Rocky, everybody. They have probably specific percentages of what they're getting on the royalties on certain things, but they would definitely be still for me. They would be the best because I don't think I had any t-shirts in WWE outside of the Right to Censor one, which sold one t-shirt. Still trying to find that person that bought it. I owed money. Right? We owed money for those shirts. It was a negative thing on our royalty check, like breakdown, the itemization. I owed money. I had to pay the company because they bought like a gross of shirts or a few grosses. And I got heat for that because the other guys had to pay too.
Really?
It's like I didn't know the t-shirt. God, can this end? And it did. So there we go.
With that being said, you've been very open, in fairness, with what you made in WWE, at least as far as your last contract went. We did a whole breakdown, first episode or the second episode, I can't remember, that we did. But what game paid the best? I don't know if you want to give numbers out, but what game paid the best and what game paid the worst that you as on the main roster, I should say.
I don't have an exact figure, but I have to say the SmackDown game where I was right to censor Stevie Richards paid me the most. And I would say that was probably between 30 to 40,000 as a total check. So, but see, there's no way of knowing if that's the exact number because once again, pay-per-view DVDs, we were on all the pay-per-views. We were in other things that were like the encyclopedia, I don't think came out just yet. There were definitely different things that we were figured into, but the video game probably ate up a large portion of that check. Now, just like he said, as time went on, each royalty check got less and less and less, but there was no way to truly break down how much I was getting paid strictly from the video game. I wasn't part of the sleeper cell that handled the accounting.
No, of course. As far as you know, I mean, maybe aside from someone like The Undertaker or The Rock, or, what are the super, like, megastar names, or whoever ends up on the cover, who's the cover star, because obviously they'll get a bump in pay as well. Were most people, if you know this, basically on a flat rate?
Don't assume the people on the cover are getting more.
That's I thought that was true. I thought it was absolutely true.
I hope it is, but I'm saying that's like assuming somebody on TV is an instant millionaire.
I'd always assumed that whoever was on the cover got a bump in pay, and I assume that even more when AEW had Fight Forever out, because didn't their cover go from like 2 people on as cover stars to 10? And I always assumed
they took one off. That's for sure.
Oh, which one was that? Punk.
Punk, yeah, Punk was on there. I don't know. I hope so, but see, this is the thing. You just said earlier something very important. First of all, how much can we get away with before the boys and the girls start complaining? Also, what hill do you want to die on? Do you really want to complain? You're on the cover. Do you want to complain that you didn't get paid for being on the cover? That's them talking, not me. Okay, you'll never be in a video game again. Here's your extra $5,000. Now you'll never be in a video game again.
Just getting to what I was saying before, do you think for most people who aren't, the main eventers, I guess, is it a flat rate for most people, do you think?
I couldn't tell you. There was such a fluid, subjective type of thing when it came to house show payoffs, TV payoffs, pay-per-view payoffs. There was never a set amount for your place on the card. It was always different. I don't know what the factors are, and I never will. So, and I think that's designed that way. If I knew exactly what I was getting paid and why I was getting paid, and then you move me up on the card, what do you think I'm going to say? Well, I was lower mid, now I'm mid upper. I know mid upper makes this much. Why am I making this much? If it's always a mystery, and then there's this unwritten rule that the boys never talk about money. You never talk about a man's wallet. You have a perfect storm for just uncertainty.
One more thing with royalties. Could you have negotiated royalties through THQ or whoever directly, or was it always through WWE?
Well, there's no negotiation. It was just WWE giving it to you. if you now, I don't know what happened afterwards. I assume he still did. Vince hates agents. Vince hates representatives. And maybe he does because they complicate it, but they complicate it for the client to do better. So that's why Barry Bloom was so sought after by a lot of, and that probably did include, hey, I looked at the numbers. I had a forensic accountant, or I'm a lawyer and an accountant, and I'm looking at this. This isn't fair. You need to give us this percentage off the net or the gross or whatever you want to do. Now I know that, man, there's been some guys. I remember Road Dogg talking about with DX, the quarterly royalty checks were 7 figures. They were not the payoffs, the royalty checks.
Just for Road Dogg or in total?
I think it was just for Road Dogg. He got a check that was almost $1 million. Oh. And think about it. How many people were wearing DX shirts in high schools and saying "suck it" and crotch? They were the hottest. So I can only imagine what The Rock and Austin and Taker, what their royalty checks look like in 2024. They have to be minimum 6 figures.
Oh, minimum 7 figures for Austin, easy. I heard at one point at Austin's peak, his royalty check in 1 year was $10 million.
And he deserves every penny and more.
Mm-hmm.
And I think he really probably made 15 to 20. And they screwed him out of it.
Oh God, yeah.
I mean, you could complain about 10 million, but dude, that's a guy that literally, like him and probably 3 other talents, but mostly Austin, saved the company. He completely changed the whole identity of the company. One character.
So, No Mercy. We'll talk. I'm going to save No Mercy for slightly later on. Why don't we talk about?
Hey, by the way, Steve. Hey, Steve. What we just said. You better be feeding those cats some good cat food. You got the money, dude.
Oh, you following him on Instagram and his farm deal?
I love her. Of course. No, I don't follow. I just know.
You just as one cat lover to another.
We have conversations once in a while about the keto diet and other things. So
I was thinking some sort of almost like spiritual, mystical sort of connection where you just know he's treating the cats.
I send him pictures of my cats. I do send him pictures of my cats all the time.
How do you?
It's a one-upmanship, no matter what. If anybody ever gets pictures of pets, you have to one-up. It's a lot like wrestling, being a cat owner. Like I'll send cat pictures to like Big Sal from ECW, and then he'll send me cat pictures back, and I'll be like, "You always got to get the last word in here. I'll send them back to you. I'll show you." That's what I say. So
I'll show you. You'll see.
I'll show you.
So why don't we go on the game? So No Mercy we're going to leave till last because I love the story. We did tell it on WSI, but we're going to tease it for a little later. And then we've still got more stuff, including Stevie's top and bottom lists of wrestling games of all time. And for goodness sake, I mean the amount of like obscure titles that you came out with at the beginning of this feature makes me think that you've probably played like 100 of these games. So I'm looking forward to what you're going to say about that. But you are now going to tee up some of the footage from the games that you appear in, and you're almost, I guess, going to rank your appearance in all of these games.
Well, what I missed was the one I missed was SmackDown Just Bring It, but I got No Mercy because a lot of people requested No Mercy. So what I think we'll do is start with No Mercy here as far as the ranking. I'll bring it up right here. We have my character right here, which isn't really ranked as far as a rating. Ratings were big, Madden ratings, and of course these ratings. This was just an overall kind of, here's the character and that's it. There was really no ranking as far as you see 6'3", 238. It was 262, but I was 6'3" back then. So, you have that. And as I'm playing this, you can see they gave you different outfits. Even my old black jean shorts, when I first came to WWE, I had longer black shorts right here. Oh, no, Matumbo right there. But you can see I switched right there to those. So they have that. There's China. I'm going through, picking right here. It's me versus Taz and No Mercy. Now, as we come back to me, Chris, I want to explain something right here. I was terrible at playing all these games yesterday. I've been terrible because when you go from N64, Dreamcast, PlayStation, and then Xbox, the control configurations are all different.
Oh,
So I need to
yeah.
remap my Steam Deck. I read the remap the Steam Deck to be a universal control scheme. I got to find that. So, but I was terrible at all these games when I played them. But here's the entrance we're going to go into. Now, this was really one of the first games to have the Titantron with the music and everything. We're not going to play the music. Everybody hates it. But right here, they have the Titantron pop up. And then basically you'll see Bull and myself come out. Now, this was also one of the first games to have a second when you came out. So it was pretty cool there. The graphics are there, all that stuff, really great. Even Taz's stuff, having pyro in a game was pretty, even though it looks rudimentary, kind of remedial right now, it was a big deal back then.
Just the Titantron, I want to point out, if no one had No Mercy, or we've got some younger viewers, listeners, this is a bit redundant, I'm sorry for the audio listeners, I apologize for that, but the Titantron, because you just couldn't play any good music, you can play any quality music like MP3, like on the PlayStation, because that was on disc. This was still on cartridge, and it's still 64-bit. And you couldn't have any video, you couldn't have any good music, so all of the Titantrons were about 3 frames of images, all of them practically, apart from maybe DX's, which is about 8.
Well, I will say this too. These games, and I'm going to use this 2 words about games, because I have an affinity for the older games. They have heart and they have soul. And dare I say, 3rd word would be spirit. There's something about these games that, in my opinion, play even better than today's games. They get way too fancy. That's why I love WrestleFest, which is WrestleMania, or Retromania Wrestling is the sequel to WrestleFest. So you can see me, this isn't realistic. I'm beating Taz up. Match would have been over by now if it was real.
You look sort of the same height on this as well. I mean, I don't think it really conveyed height that well, this game.
No, like I said, it was blocky, kind of like scanned over, same guys. And Virtual Pro Wrestling was like that, which is what based on. And of course, WCW versus NWO World Tour and Revenge was based on that as well. I'm out of here. Yeah, the flying shoulder block. I've always been known for that.
That was something else I wanted to mention beforehand, is did you have any say in what moves you did or didn't do? Because I know they've got so many button combinations in this game. For I think there's like 16 moves or something like that you could do. Like there was the soft grapple, and then there was the hard grapple where you'd sort of move your arms, go and then grapple. And so you have to have 16 moves. So are they just filling in the blanks, or are they good at that? Or
probably filling it, probably giving you a basic. I didn't have really but for Taz, he had all his suplexes, so they did customize, and it all really matters. It all comes down to if the development team are fans of yours or not. That's how they rate you. That's how they add. By the way, Chris, if the image is flipped for James, but if you can just insert this in here, that would be great.
No, it's not flipped for me. It's fine.
My famous flying shoulder block again. Mm-hmm. There it is. So, well, I'm going to go back to this, like the character screen. So as we come back to this, this was an incredible opportunity, and I was very grateful to be a part of a video game. In my opinion, this is the true way that I would be immortalized, this and action figures. So I've mentioned that on both of our interviews on WSI, and as we talk about it more, but that was No Mercy. Incredible game. Now, in the list, you'll be surprised where I do and don't rank No Mercy, a game I was in that I really do have an affinity for, but I believe that both WCW games on N64 were better. They played smoother, they were better, and it just something about No Mercy had a little bit more lag in it than those 2 games.
The one thing for WrestleMania 2000 I always like more is, you were talking about the entrances, and the SmackDown entrances were just the character, and the backdrop was entirely the Titantron, so you didn't get like the stage or anything. Whereas at WrestleMania 2000, you got like the first half of the entrance that was on the rampway, and you walked down, and then they went into the ring afterwards, which I really loved. That was like the one thing No Mercy was lacking for me. Aside from that, No Mercy is my favorite. Easy. I love the engine, and I love how it's not arcadey. Like you can only hit your enemy at certain circumstances, not when they're rising up. You have to wait for them to get up and then the battle can sort of commence, and it's, for whatever reason, it works really well, and it's a really well tuned way of doing a wrestling game. Whereas the SmackDown ones were always far more arcadey for my tastes.
I agree with you, and that's a great point. See, welcome back, James. I need you for this show. Don't try to make me do another solo one. This is what I loved about World Tour, Revenge, Fire Pro. We're going to talk about Giant Graham 2000, the All Japan one, New Japan 4, and what you just said about No Mercy. It's not just the button mashing. It's literally, there's different levels of moves. You can't just hit somebody with, what's it called? Like, there's a light, medium, and heavy type of offense, and then your special, something like that. You can't go right to a medium or a heavy, and definitely not your finish. You need the special in No Mercy and WCW games on N64. I love that. Also, positioning. Is the person behind you? Are they to the side of you? You can turn and, like, I paid attention to the ref and started kicking the referee at one time because you had a control to. So when it's a tag match, 6-man, Royal Rumble, stuff like that, you're not confused. You know, if you hit this button, the arrow points different ways. They did a great job with it. These games still, like I said, they not only stand up in 2024, but in a lot of ways, there's stuff I almost liken it to Madden. Things that were in Madden 06, 07, 08 are now out of the game in 2024. And then when people complain, oh, we put this one feature back in. That's not the, I don't know why video games has stripped away the features, the nuance, as we would say, or the details, and the things that make it a more immersive experience and made it so arcadey. And then you introduce like algorithms and AI and scripting of the moves and stuff, and it comes off like a really bad cutscene that you have no control over. That's the 2K games, right? They like you hit this and then it goes through like a bunch of reversals. You're like, well, I'd like to do it myself.
Yeah, there was. Do you know what? One thing that later games started bringing up that I really hated was they started introducing mini games within the game. For, I don't know, countering a submission or something like that. And that really bugged me. I like, what I like about No Mercy in some of the older games is reverse is one button, but reverse, like the parameters of where you press the button at the right time are larger when the move is more impactful. So if you just go for a powerbomb straight away, it's easier to reverse that because, you've still got your energy bar and stuff like that, I guess, or, most of your life in. And it's almost, I wonder with No Mercy and the rest of the, I call it, is it Aki? Because I was called it AKI.
I don't know. I call it Aki.
Oh, okay. Well, whatever it is, I almost think that some of the innovations were born from limitations on the N64 that you sort of just had to do. And it just worked out really well. But now there are less limitations on the hardware. I think maybe software engineers get a bit too cute with ideas.
Complicated things are not always a good thing. Extra whatever is not only, and I just want to understand, you have all the horsepower and the storage in the world to do it now, and you take features out of Madden. It doesn't make it. By the way, you know what? No Mercy and the other two WCW and even WrestleMania 2000 and N64. This reminds me of Minecraft before Minecraft.
Okay.
The character models, like Minecraft characters.
Sort of. I mean, I always liked with WrestleMania 2000.
Blocky compared to graphics today.
Oh, God, yeah. I liked in WrestleMania 2000 No Mercy that most of the characters, when they walked, looked like they'd shit the pants. They'd sort of like that, and they're all doing
the Vince one. Well, remember I said during the PJ match, I almost did the video game thing like that. That's what I did in No Mercy.
I think it's when you do that as well. That was a block. So you just do that and somehow like things wouldn't hurt you anymore. Man, I love No Mercy. My N64 just broke years ago, man. Okay, so the one game on this list that I've not played, so you'll have to guide me through this, is WWE Raw 2, because I never had the Xbox, the original one at least.
Yeah, you said the controller. The controller was no joke. But they did come out with a small controller, Xbox S. But here's some
should have been the L for the lady.
That would have been large then. People would have been like, this is actually, now I will say this about Raw 2. They did a great job stepping up the graphics, coming from, say, SmackDown and all that stuff. I really liked the way they did the presentation. It was a full raw presentation with the Union Underground song that we're not going to play and the whole opening of Raw. They did a great job. And as we go through here, you can see we're going to have Stephen Richards versus Hulk Hogan in a Hell in a Cell match. Hell in a Cell match. I'm sure he wishes he got me in one right now. So, but look at the background. I want to show you this.
Hulk Hogan was in the the very first Hell in a Cell, I think you'll find, according to him. He invented it, brother. He
actually fought Satan in Hell in a Cell.
Mm-hmm.
Do you know that, brother?
Oh yeah, he did the job.
Even the what am I doing? What is he doing? Oh, there's fireworks in my eyes. Oh my goodness.
Do you know, you look a bit like Rico in that.
Yeah, that was like the in-between, short hair, trying to grow it out a little bit. But they had my entrance and everything, and the way they did it, the crowd, all that stuff, they did a great job. This was a great step up. The Titantron in the background, everything. They did a great job with it. Now, we might have to go through Hogan's. He takes as much time as we talked about with the entrances today. It was very much a slow entrance here. There we go.
That's the Tommy Dreamer pants era, I believe.
Yes, exactly. He lent me a pair. There's Hogan. But dude, the camera angles, the way they mapped the arena, the commentators are down in the corner. They did a great job, and there he is.
I lied beforehand. I did actually play this game once, and it was in Toys R Us. And I remember it being a Hell in a Cell match. I remember thinking it looked like a big step up from the PlayStation 1. Definitely.
It was.
When was the PS2 out?
PS2, when did it debut? I would say
2001, 2002, maybe?
I'm seeing a lot of stuff from 98, 95. I'm saying 94, 95 maybe, because the WrestleMania game was 95.
No, that was one. The PS1 came out in 94. PS2 came out, 2000.
2000?
Yeah.
2000.
Do you know, I've realized, because you know, the game
was 2003. That's a big jump in 2 to 3 years.
Yeah. I've noticed that you weren't in any of the GameCube games.
Ring, by the way. He's still going. He's in the ring now.
Do you want to start doing Voodoo Child?
They did play the music, by the way. They played Voodoo Child for the entrance.
Oh,
it's crazy.
Yeah, the network ruins every Hulk Hogan entrance that isn't Voodoo Child, because that's just a great entrance song. That being said, I just wanted to mention also that you're in none of the GameCube games, because I think the GameCube had data limitations because the discs were so much smaller, so they only really had like rosters of like 30 or 40 in total.
The Day of Reckoning was an awesome game.
Never played those. I had WrestleMania 18, I had WrestleMania 19.
I think Day of Reckoning was the most popular one on GameCube. People can comment, let me know. Look at this guy. He's mad that I was making fun of the beer, and because you roped me into the many lies of Hulk Hogan. This dude's running at me with reckless abandon. I had to put an elbow up. Now this here also, you know, it's reversed, so flip the image, Chris, for everybody out there. But
it's not reversed. Not on mine, anyway.
Oh yeah, it is. It's flipped. It's flipped on the screen that I'm looking at, not on the iPad. Very strange. It's flipped on Zoom, but it's not flipped on Ecamm. So a little tech knowledge there. Now Hulk Hogan would never take a swinging neck breaker from me or anybody, and now I'm going to put him in a half crab.
His back doesn't bend that way. I'm pretty sure.
But I'm telling you, this was a great step up from the SmackDown games. No, I can't. No way, brother. Not today.
Do you think that Hulk Hogan had a word with the game developers and said, brother, I want this do-rag staying on at all times?
I have to give him credit. Yeah, that would be great. Oh, we do have the memo we can get into after this game, or do you want that to be after we go through all of them?
Oh, well, okay, so the memo story relates to this game then.
Look at this. Look at this Hulk Hogan hip toss off the ropes. And left. Everybody punched left for some of these games. So yeah. I want to talk about that. We can do it after all the games and after we list them, but sorry, Chris is going to have his work cut out for him. Everyone on Patreon appreciates the work you're putting in, Chris, and the work you're going to put in to this edit.
Oh, goodness me. Yeah, I'm looking forward to this Memo story. Okay, we'll leave it after we've seen all the games. So the next one is Here Comes the Pain. I think this is seminal, the seminal SmackDown game of the era. I mean, some people still say it's the greatest wrestling game that's ever been made. For those who remember, it's the one with Brock Lesnar.
I disagree with that.
Oh yeah,
I'm in this game. I would disagree. Yeah, definitely a Brock Lesnar game. I left him out so we don't get any kind of content ID or anything. All right, this is where I guess we'll talk about ratings because I have the right here. Bring it up. This is my rating. So my rating right here was an overall 63.
Did any of the women have over 63 in this game?
No, some of the women were rated higher than me.
Yes, that's what I was asking you.
Yes. I didn't look through there because I didn't need my ego to be crushed anymore. I'd rather now they have a thing where the football players all react to their Madden ratings. So it's a thing. Now, the graphics, I'm just talking about, you looked at Raw too. Did a decent job with the graphics, but it still looked a little more Minecraft-ish type of thing. Look at the detail on my face. Even that was the pose I did when they did the scan. The level of detail, my shoulder, my deltoids look a little better than real life. But yeah, I mean, they did a great job with the character models. It was a great step up with this. So then we have, oh, look at that. Stevie Richards versus Shawn Michaels in a Hell in a Cell.
Yeah, I seem to remember not being that impressed with Shawn Michaels' rendering model. I mean, he's quite nostrily. In now, that one.
This might be because some of the talent didn't want to be bothered to go in and get scanned, and they just went off of pictures or past scans from last generation. That's would be my guess.
Yeah, I mean, at least they've like grown his hair out a bit longer because when he returned, I mean, he had like that page boy bob, didn't he, in 2002? So they've done him a favor. That's when he's
wrestling with the wife beater and the jeans at SummerSlam 2002.
Yeah. And then
great match, by the way.
Oh, it's a great match. But then he follows up with, doesn't he go to Elimination Chamber and he's got poo brown tights that he only ever wears once?
I don't remember that.
Oh,
I do remember the Elimination Chamber match. So what I'm going to do is now that the mechanics of the game, I'm going to show you probably my favorite part of the game. And I didn't even know, even when I played it, I didn't know they did this. Watch this. When you hit special, now there's another part here where it turned black and white, I think in another game. I'll have to check it out. But watch this. I like that. And he starts stomping in the corner.
For the audio listeners out there putting up with this very much visual medium, you'll have to describe what that was.
Well, he did Sweet Chin music. He did his, stomping in the corner and everything, saying, you took my gimmick so long, now I'm going to kick you in the face. There you go. And I'm going to dance.
Do you know, I'm looking at I'd completely forgotten this.
By the way, I kick out. And then the NXT, oh my God, I can't believe, oh no, he pinned me. Oh, that's more predictable.
Yeah, with Here Comes the Pain, you've got the damage to the head and the body in the red. And I remember that being from the WCW games in the mid-90s. Nitro and Thunder, if you remember those.
I do remember those, yeah. I do. And that's something I really liked about Giant Graham 2000 that we'll get into. This next one here, we're going to go right into it. I'm a 77, by the way, in this SmackDown game. So I actually forget which one this is. I'm sorry about that.
If it's the last one, it'll be SmackDown versus Raw 2006.
That is this. Yeah, you're absolutely right. That's what this one is. So I'm a 77, a little bit higher. But of course, I'm going to pick Shawn Michaels again. Bring that up for you.
So how does it feel to have gone up 11 points in between games?
Now, what I like about this, fight clean or fight dirty. You can choose to be a babyface or a heel. I really do like that a lot. So that's the rating screen here. It was SmackDown versus Raw right here. Now, I like the fact that, once again, Shawn Michaels, I fight dirty, he fights clean. You can pick WrestleMania is locked, which I like because you have to play story mode, I guess, to unlock WrestleMania.
Yeah, but do you know what, right? Do you know what? You say you like that, right? But can you think of any other medium where you purchase content and then it locks you out of it and says that, no, you have to earn this content that you've already bought?
I'll tell you. I hate the fact that when, like, I have Red Dead Redemption 2, I have to forcibly play through so they can teach me the controls and all this stuff. Grand Theft Auto does sort of the same thing. Also, Madden makes you play to a certain level before you can open up and unlock certain things. So I just like the fact that I would love if everything's opened up, but it's just like 2 or 3 WrestleMania like arenas. I kind of like that. I could play a little bit of story mode, do that. Now I'm going to fast forward. Now you can see they do an even better job with the cage and all the other stuff in this updated version versus an updated version of SmackDown versus Raw. So, oops, it's not realistic. I'm throwing a drop kick, but I'm going to get to the finish right here. This is awesome. And when we get to it,
Oh, so it's the special camera angle when he's tuning up the band for the kick.
they improved it. But I think it goes to black and white. I saw some things were black and white. There we go, right there. I really like this. And goes back to color, and it's almost like slow-mo replay. The dance is still brutal, but oh, here I go. Ah, you prostituted your finish. I can't believe you kicked out. I can't believe it, NXT. There we go.
Which of those? Okay, so of all the characters, all the renderings of yourself, which ones do you like the best? Which game did the best job, essentially, with you?
They cleaned up the character in SmackDown versus Raw, but I like the character model and the way they scan, the look on my face, and everything from Here Comes the Pain. It just looks like it has more, I guess, depth to it. It feels like more of a real scan. The one for that, because I have the ponytail too, the ponytail just kind of goes like this, like it doesn't move. It's harder to kind of get the motion down. Whereas with the shorter hair, but down the hair, it has more life to it than the SmackDown versus Raw one. The No Mercy one just kind of, for its time, moves good, but it's very blocky.
Just personally speaking, of those 6 games that you're in, know your role, maybe notwithstanding, I guess, because you weren't actually a main roster in that, but which is your favourite game out of that 5? And we'll talk about best and worst games in a short while, but which of the ones do you like the most in general?
As far as gameplay or overall present, just making my model.
Yeah.
SmackDown versus Raw, big jump. Here Comes the Pain was a really good jump, but the SmackDown versus Raw series, I think they finally got how to use the Ukes engine, how to really maximize it, and then obviously you die a hero, live long enough to become the villain. The engine got super stale, and even in the 2K games, constantly using that outdated engine. And I don't know what it looks like today, but I think they use a different engine today, right? Than Ukes.
Oh, yeah. I think
they have to.
Yeah, I thought from like WWE like 12 and beyond, I think it was just entirely different. Are
they trying to use? I don't know if they use the Unreal engine or the Frostbite engine, or they definitely switched to a more full-featured engine.
I remember Fight Forever, I don't know if it was Kenny Omega or someone like that, was trying to say that we were going to try and get to the Aki, however you pronounce it, style of gameplay of the No Mercies, etc., which I don't think they achieved. But at least they were aiming for that. But I find it so funny how, like, in 2020, whenever this started, 2021, 2020, when they were developing this game, that they still can't mimic a game that was probably started development in, 97? For that kind of wrestling engine? I can't believe it's so hard to mimic that these days.
I don't know. We're still looking right now that I looked it up. The Ukes engine was SmackDown versus Raw, WWE 13, and WWE 2K19, but it just says proprietary engine right now for that. Visual Concepts 2K is making that. They made ESPN 2K5, so I don't know if they're taking elements of that in there, but I can't get a clear answer on that. Yeah, we're going to get the AEW fans are going to be mad at us because that's on the list. Fight Forever, not on the good list.
two non-WWE games that you're part of. I just wanted to mention this: Extreme Warfare Revenge, which I played the crap out of, because that's like the only management sim that I've ever sunk time into. In that sense,
People have mentioned that in the comments. That game.
yeah,
I'm in that game.
I'm in that game. I'm not a wrestler. Everyone on earth is in that game. Anyone who was ever a wrestler, like past or present, unless they're debuted in the 40s or something, was in that game. And it was completely, the guy who made it didn't have the rights to use anybody's names or anything like that. There were no pictures attached to it. There were no logos attached to it. But what there was every single wrestler pretty much in existence who was active, or at least, near active at that time, was in it. But also, they used the names WWE, TNA, Ring of Honor, or whatever it was. They used all these trademark names for it, and it was free. It was a free game. They didn't make any money out of it. And then from there, I think the guy changed the name and had to basically make up a load of names for wrestlers and companies and stuff, so it was never the same.
I got to go way back before video games and just games in general. I forget the name of it, but I ordered it from the mail off of Pro Wrestling Illustrated when I was a kid, before I even got into the business. It was called Ringside something, I believe. You got cards of the wrestlers with their ratings, and also you would roll dice like Dungeons and Dragons. And you would win matches and do moves. If you would roll the dice and get the number associated with the move, you would do the move and then knock a certain amount of damage off of your opponent. So you'd all be looking at the cards, rolling dice like Dungeons and Dragons, and then getting like hit points against people and their health. It was a really cool game.
Was it? So who came out with this? And did it have any like recognizable names attached to it, or?
They probably have updated versions of these games, like with pictures and stuff. These were strictly the names, and it was a grid of like where they're from, what they weigh, and then all the moves with the number, like when you roll the dice, the number associated with that move and reversals and all. It was really cool.
Did you have the VHS board game from the WWF?
I did not. And I didn't have the Hulk Hogan workout set that somehow Paul Orndorff was doing the commercial for it, not Hogan.
Well, we couldn't tell if he was a heel or babyface during the time when he filmed it, because he flipped twice in 2 years, don't forget.
Oh, he was a heel in that gym vignette. Remember that?
Oh, I love that one. And also Gary Spivey.
I have the most wonderfulest body in wrestling.
Did you ever watch the Gary Spivey one in WCW?
Oh yeah, that was great. That was the best version of Mr. Wonderful, in my opinion, where he came out to the song and that was Paul Orndorff. I always thought Paul was a little bit too serious, a little bit too, like, you could tell he's a little bit too high strung. That was the first time I saw Paul Orndorff like truly having fun, at least my interpretation. He was like, and he was one of the people in creative. He was an agent and everything, right?
I know he was in the power plant, I think, for a while. Was he part of training?
So he was figured into that. You talk about, like, in a way, yeah, he was definitely a trainer for the power plant, I believe. But when he was doing that, and then he teamed up with Paul Roma, they had it pretty wonderful. They had a really cool tag team. To show your ass, as we would say, to show your vulnerability, to not take yourself too seriously. I think that was a great message to the young wrestlers or the trainees that, hey, if I can do it, what's your excuse for not doing it?
I want to mention one more game that you're involved in. It's a lot later. It's Retromania. Also that the cartoon that the analysis channel used was the artwork from Retromania, and occasionally that pops up in this show as well. So I wanted to make mention of that. And I spoke to one of the developers in Philly when I was there in April. He was a very nice fella. Michael
Herman, very good friend. He has a great passion for video games. I actually have the Retromania cabinet over here from iArcade and play that. It's a great game. I have it on the Steam Deck. I'm probably going to end up doing a dedicated video to that. I don't have much footage on it, but this was the first game where I was kind of allowed, to basically give my input, to help with beta testing. The Stevie Richards Fitness like training center is part of the story mode. The Stevie Richards Fitness it has an arena. There's a BWO arena. There's so many things in this. This is the true sequel to WrestleFest, which is one of my favorite wrestling arcade games out there. And it was definitely a lot of, stress. Mike stressed out about a lot of things, but took a lot of pride in the game and everybody with that. And those characters and things that happen, those were hand drawn. There's a lot of work put into that game.
Okay, then. So the story that I've been sort of teasing, I was going to ask you for the past hour, I guess, by now, is the No Mercy story. WWF No Mercy. And for people who do know, they've probably watched you explain this on WSI a year or so ago. But I'm hoping a decent amount of you, or at least the majority of you maybe, don't know the stories that Stevie was entered into the WWF No Mercy game as one of the main characters almost last minute. So, why were you included last minute, and who did you replace?
Well, I can answer the second question first because I don't have an interesting answer for the first one. It was Big Show, my good friend Paul White, who for some reason still reminds me to this day that I had something to do with this because apparently I'm super powerful and political and I can make things happen. So I will answer the first question. I had no idea. Nobody came up to me. Nobody asked me. Nobody made me do it. Nobody gave me a heads up. I was not privy to any of this. And I did not even hear about this urban legend, say I pronounced it correctly, urban legend until probably, I think the first WSI interview. I've heard rumblings about it, but you're the one that brought it up in detail. I had no clue.
Really?
And I was, yeah, I didn't know. I mean, people would mention it to me like, oh, you're the reason Big Show got kicked out of No Mercy, or Big Show was being punished, or Big Show had heat, or he was leaving the company. It had more to do with Big Show than me. Somebody could have just said, pitched me before that. Like I said, I was mostly friends with the people at the video game company, the action figure, the developers. I really got to know them as much as I could. So it could have been just like, well, Stevie's not in the game and he'll appreciate it. So let's put him in the game. And WWE might have been like, okay, whatever, put him in the game. He's on TV right now. It could have been just as easy as that. But yeah. And Paul, his guarantee, I don't think he needed the video game money, but he probably could have still used it. But thank you, Paul. Appreciate it.
Okay, so
when did you out to dinner? When captive $50.
When did you find out that you were actually in the game? When it came out?
Yeah, absolutely.
When did you find out you're going to get a royalty check from it?
Oh, that's when I started asking. that's when I became what people thought I was, a hustler, or, a mover and a shaker, hustle, grind, loyalty, respect, whatever it's called.
So the game comes out, you realize you're in it. Are you the type of person, or at least back then when you were on the road, I know you were big into carrying your Xbox around with you at the time, but would you have bought the game the first day? Were you still like a big wrestling game aficionado, that kind of thing?
I think they had the game available for the boys. I think they had copies, and I knew at that point I was in it. So, I was right there. So, but I probably would have bought it. I'm still a video game fan now. I want to buy the flight yoke for Flight Simulator or the racing wheels. I still love playing video games. So I probably would have bought it if there wasn't a copy available for that. So yeah, I have a great appreciation. Also, I want to support the companies. I mean, WWE's one thing, but I don't want THQ or Jack specific. That's why, we're going to do the action figure episode. I'm going to go and try to find them and buy them from a store or an eBay seller and support their business. I'm all about that.
So, Big Show ribs you a lot still about that. So, what's his version of things then, that he understood why he was taking out the game?
Let's see.
Are you actually going to message him?
I was going to call him.
Oh, okay.
No, I shouldn't do that. I don't want to put him on the spot. He works for a company that might not have the greatest regard for me, nor you at this point, by association. So, no, his version, I've never heard it. I do know, he just says, "Oh, it's your fault I wasn't in No Mercy," and that's the extent of it.
So,
actually, he was ribbing me before I realized it was a thing. He goes, "You going to take me out another video game?" I'm like, well, what are you talking about? You know. That's the end of it.
Do you know what the turnover time was between you being basically being put in the game and the game being released?
Had to be pretty tight. I mean, but then again, back then they weren't. They probably scanned my face for the action figure because I had the action figure during the right to censor run. If you want to call it a run, who knows? The right to censor flash in the pan. So
Stop it.
uh, I don't know. I don't think I did it. Now, sometimes they do those scans just to have it on file if they are going to have a game or something that they want to make. So I could have done a scan for the video game company, but with no indication or no idea that they were putting me in the game. So they could have had the model ready to go. For all I know, they could have took half the moves Big Show was doing, like the knee lift and the club and all that stuff, and just put my face over the model.
So you debuted as Stephen Richards on June 26th, 2000, and the game was released in North America in November 14th, 2000. So for a game, that's really tight turnaround. And they must have known that you were over enough to put in the game in the first place. So there must have been a period of time where they saw that you were becoming a quote-unquote popular character or getting a good reaction, and then saying, well, you would fit into the game in Big Show's place.
That's a possibility. And also, I think the X factor, the thing that adds to the mystery, Bull's in the game with me with the right to censor outfit. So I have to really, you know what I might do? What'd be interesting if I could find somebody at THQ, or any video game developer that might have that information. That'd be a great interview.
But saying that, Bull Buchanan would have been may have been in the game anyway because he was tagging with Bossman at the time. So really, for Bull Buchanan, that would have just been an outfit switch, and his Bossman.
So,
yeah,
they already had it ready to go. They just had to kind of take the shirt and tie and pants and put it on both guys.
So the story that I understand about it, and I think I probably revealed this to you on WSI when I first spoke to you, probably, I guess, was that Big Show was in the doghouse with WWF and Vince and whoever else in the powers that be, and he'd actually been sent to OVW at the time to lose weight. And I remember he came back in Royal Rumble 2001 and he was bigger than ever. So it didn't really do too much for him. But at the time, he was hugely in the doghouse.
Gained the weight. I was gaining the weight for him while he was gone.
Yeah, but you lost weight in OVW, though.
No, I lost weight in HWA and then we worked in OV. I'm talking about right to censor. I was gaining the weight as he was gaining. Yeah. Like, they should have sent me down there with him.
Well, there was a spot at catering for you, I guess.
Yeah, I ate all the food he was going to eat. That's what happened.
Oh, dear. Right, so No Mercy. Any other stories about No Mercy, or should we move on?
No, I think that's about it. I would really like to. I want to reconnect with the people that made these games happen anyway, to show them, even 2024, that I'm very grateful they gave me the opportunity to kind of be immortalized in this way. But man, we asking those kinds of questions, if they have the memory or they have the recall, that would be an amazing kind of like Easter egg episode on the behind the scenes of the game.
Mm. Okay, so we're going to go away from my personal favorite, No Mercy, my absolute favorite game in the wrestling sphere, to your top 5 wrestling games of all time, specifically that you've played, because you see all these game websites that say, well, this is the greatest game ever because it got 9.5 out of 10 on IGN or whatever nonsense. Now, this is your personal list of the games that you've played, that your top 3 or top 5, whatever list you've come up with, conjured up with, and take it away. So are we doing a top 5?
Well, actually, I was going to ask you first and foremost, IGN and other places, Madden reviews got exposed for being paid ads and all that stuff as far as reviews. So,
all right. So do you remember years ago, and this was in the PlayStation official magazine, this was 25 years ago, that a load of gaming journalists were invited out to review like the first Star Wars film, the game based off the first episode 1. And loads of these outfits ended up giving it like 9 out of 10, and it was crap. And all they done was
basically the racer game. That's saying the race, the one Anakin was the racing game, correct?
No, I don't think it was the racing game. It was the Phantom Menace. I thought it was like a platformer, like a top-down sort of thing, like a 3D sort of Streets of Rage kind of affair. I can't even remember. But the point is that it's been going on for decades now. The whole buying good reviews.
So here's my question to you. Do we start off with the bad news first, or we go with the good news?
I know
Do
what
we
you're
do
going to
the
say.
worst five?
I know what you're going to say. You're going to say that No Mercy's nowhere near your top 5.
No, I'm not trying to. I'm not trying to let you down easy in a pillow in a fluffy bed or anything.
Okay.
We're going to start with the bad news first. Okay, how's that?
Okay.
I'm gonna bring it up for you right here. So, the number one worst game that I've ever played is WCW Backstage Assault, where they said, why do we have a wrestling ring in a wrestling game? Let's let them fight backstage and that's it. And I know there's some people that have an affinity for this game, but it's absolutely terrible.
Does Vince Russo have an affinity for this game, considering it's the only game he's a playable character in?
I don't think he knows he's in it. So he's not much of a gamer. I'm not sure. I have to bring that up to him. Number two, WCW wrestling for Nintendo, for the NES, as you said, from the late 80s, early 90s. It had some innovation, but it played terrible. When you compared it to a game that I have in my top 5, which was also on Nintendo, and also I spent a lot of quarters in the arcade playing this game. Number 3, here we go. This is going to be the clickbait title right here. AEW Fight Forever. So hyped up, so much promise. I feel bad for Kenny Omega because I know what it's like to put your heart and soul. I worked with Retromania Wrestling, maybe not even to the extent that Kenny did. This game was late, was severely over budget, and fell way short. Now, the people that make the games, like there's always somebody that makes a game or makes a video every year based on like video game glitches like WWE 2K. I've seen those. Those are great. Where people disappear into the mat. People like, I don't know what they convulse all over each other. They're doing the Yeti hump against each other or whatever. And AEW Fight Forever had a ton of bugs. It's a terrible game, which you and I have talked about playing here on the show.
We talked about that for over a year. I remember you messaging me like at the end of last year saying we should totally do this, and we could never ever. We have like the complete polar opposite of whatever consoles we can play it on. So like your Xbox, I'm PlayStation. I've got a Steam account, and I don't think you had a Steam account at the time.
No, you only got a Steam Deck.
Oh, now you've got a Steam Deck. Well, I'll have to get a Steam Deck. Can we play online on that on Steam Deck?
I have to check, but I think this is what I wish a lot of games would do crossplay. Like Call of Duty and other games, you can crossplay with PC. And I think even some of them, like I played Star Trek Bridge Crew, that was crossplay with PC and PS4. So
I think
here we go.
Well, just before we get to number 2, number 3 again, AEW Fight Forever. Is it just the game-breaking bugs, or I've never played the game? How is it to play just in general? Let's say if everything's going right.
It just doesn't feel like a polished game. It doesn't feel like a finished game. The bugs and everything make it even worse. But for a game that was over budget and super delayed, it feels like it was rushed. That's all. And like I said, people worked hard at it. Maybe I think they weren't working off a new engine. They were trying to kind of reuse another engine. Like you said, the Aki engine, the virtual pro wrestling engine is what Kenny Omega wanted it to look like, but it just didn't. They would have been better off trying to get the Ukes engine and maximizing that because it already had a lot of years with WWE to work out the bugs. You're looking something up.
I am looking something up. It's both ECW games at number 4.
Yep, both ECW games. These two were acclaimed games, which was like WWF had Warzone and other things. And that's really what these two games were. Remember the thing with this? The guy moving, like just, here, I'll bring my video back up. The guy going. Like, that's what it was. And there's a lot of Easter eggs in the game that Danny Doring told me about, people screaming and saying stupid stuff just because the game was a total cluster to make.
Well, it was a total reskin of WWF Attitude. Like both of them are.
And Warzone, those are the two games. So Attitude and the Warzone game, right?
But Attitude, WWF Attitude was a bit of an improvement on Warzone. At least it added like a load of new I mean, the actual gameplay, I suppose, was really, really similar. It sort of worked a bit better, but at least Attitude had, entrances, or better entrances, and weapons, and game modes, and a better story mode. What Attitude didn't have in Warzone was Ahmed Johnson speaking into the
That's what I was
microphone attached to probably the camera, so he like more marble mouth and intelligible than normal. Like, no one can tell what he says.
And I think during or somebody did that in the game during their appeal thing where you do your like or whatever. They did that. The last one on the I should have went backwards, but number 5, they're no particular order, by the way. They're all equally as bad in my opinion. TNA Impact. Not a good game. Just not a good game. TNA tried to do certain things. But once again, I think TNA, we'll talk. We have an episode on TNA coming up in a future episode. There you go.
Take a shot.
But TNA just tried to do everything on a marketing level without investing the money that WWE invested in the marketing, like papering the towns, radio shows, any kind of promotion or ads, and the video games and the action figures. They got the action figures right to a certain degree, but it was just, they acted like it was found money, I think, like guaranteed money, instead of saying we really need to work and make this into something.
With the TNA game, there's 2 things I remember from it. I remember it looking pretty good. I don't think the graphics were that much of a problem. I just don't think it played very well. This is just me remembering back in the time. I also remember if you wanted to do story mode, you had to play as Suicide. You couldn't play as anyone else.
Yeah. Yeah, and that was a good gimmick for the game, because it was not going to survive. Yeah, I remember looking at it and saying this was good, but then the playability and the graphics, the collision detection, a lot of now the funny thing was I don't remember any real bugs standing out. I just remember it being a very bare bones game. I don't even know what engine they used. It actually looked like a mix between the Warzone engine and the N64 engine. Like they like amalgamated it.
Unreal Engine 3.
Really? Wow. They didn't really implement it all that well, did they?
Midway published that as well. I do have to, and developed it. I do have to say, I never played the TNA Impact game. Here's the thing: it's like I'm not a huge gamer. I'm not going to try everything. I mean, at the time, didn't have the money to buy all the games, I'm sure as well. But I would only buy something if I knew it had a fantastic rating. So really, all I've ever played are like AAA games for the most part.
Because that's IGN. If you get a high rating, are you really going to buy it?
Yeah, exactly. If the game publishers have bought themselves a really good rating, then I'll consider it. That's how it goes. So no, I never played the TNA one.
You worked yourself into a shoot, as they say.
Yes, basically.
So the reason why I bought the game is because I wanted to support TNA. AJ, Joe, and Daniels were friends of mine, so I wanted to see what it looked like. Technically that was their first game they were in, so of course I wanted to support my buddies. So.
It's funny as well. You know how TNA ratings were always like 1.5, something like that, like for years. The game sold 1.5 million units. They just love that number. That's not unrespectable number of units sold at all, though. So they must have done something right.
All right, number 5, Matt Mania. Do you remember Matt Mania?
Never even heard of it.
It's amazing. This was on Nintendo. This is what I'm saying with WCW wrestling. Matt Mania was the OG in this. I played this in so many. This was like in every Chinese restaurant in Philadelphia, the arcade game. And while I was waiting for the order to pick up, I would go. They would be like, oh, it's going to be 10, 20 minutes. I would leave right away. My mom and dad would be like, you can wait. And I was like, oh, no. I would have like a couple of dollars and I'd play Mad Mania. And I have it on the Retromania thing that I could try to B-roll some of the footage of me playing it. It's an amazing game. It's awesome. So much fun. And it's got to be over 40 years old by this point.
Well, go a bit more into it. What makes it so good? Was it affiliated with any promotion?
It was like you had a Road Warrior knockoff, you had a Superfly Snuka knockoff. Uh, you had yourself going through you went through kind of the gauntlet of matches, and I really, really liked it. I can't explain it, dude. It just had heart and soul and spirit to it, and it was so much fun to play. It's very basic, very remedial, but it was really cool to play. So the selling was like, oh, like like weird facial expressions and stuff, but I liked it. Number 4, WrestleFest. Now you played WrestleFest, right?
Oh, maybe only a tiny bit. Was this arcade WrestleFest?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes, arcade.
Yeah. Yeah, with the big chunky characters, not like in the late ones like
Yes.
Royal Rumble and yeah.
Used to do the big punches and all that. But if you want a taste of WrestleFest on console or Steam Deck, it's available for Steam Deck and Steam. WrestleMania Wrestling is the official sequel to WrestleFest. So I put WrestleMania Wrestling with WrestleFest. Say those things 10 times fast as number 4 in that. Number 3, you're going to get mad, but I pointed out some of the lag and no mercy. Number 3, WCW Revenge. WCW NWO Revenge. The best N64 wrestling game ever made. They really improved upon World Tour, that right there. Number 2, you might not have heard of this game, Giant Graham 2000. I have footage. It's for Dreamcast, which I think Dreamcast was the most underrated console ever. Dude, the Dreamcast in 2000, 2001 had online play. I would play NBA 2K1, NFL 2K1. I would play games online. They had a game called Shimu, where you literally grew a tadpole and you had to turn the game on because it worked off the clock on the console. And if you neglected your living thing, it would die. So you had to go and turn the game on and foster it and feed it and talk to it and do different things. It was really cool. And it even came with a microphone adapter that you plugged into the Dreamcast controller, and you would talk to the living thing that you were raising. It was
Sounds just like a
awesome.
Tamagotchi.
Yes, exactly. But virtual. I played a fishing game on Dreamcast.
Yeah.
A pole controller. Super Bass Fishing, I think it was called, or something. Dude, Dreamcast was underrated.
Did you ever have the Royal Rumble on Dreamcast? Because I remember them making a big deal. It's the first time you can play 6 characters.
And it was great. It was great for its time, but not as great as the Japanese offerings. New Japan Pro Wrestling 4, and in this case, Giant Graham 2000. Now, for this, what I'm going to do is, and Chris can put the full screen up, but for your reaction, I'm going to show you gameplay. Specifically, the main thing that I loved about Giant Graham 2000 was when you did damage, an x-ray of the body part would come up with a percentage that you injured the body part. Check this out. And then I put him in a hold. How cool is that? As I'm doing it. And he's crawling to the ropes.
Is that Masawa?
So that's Masawa.
Yeah.
And Vader. Vader in this too, when you fire up, Vader rips the mask off and gets like that Bane type of, like when he injected the venom or turned the venom on. Dude, the game, Giant Graham 2000, I would have made it the top thing. The controllers are physics based, like ergonomic based, meaning that you hit, and like I said, the button mapping was off, so my play was terrible. If you hit a button in a direction, you lean in and lock up. Then you got to pull back. Then you got to push down. Then you push a button and it does the power bomb. So in front, like DaVinci Resolve for video editors, it's frustratingly fantastic. An amazing game, even with the entrances, the movements. 24 years later, this game, when I pick it up and play it, I just keep playing it. It's awesome. So that's what I wanted to show you right there. Also, the reversals and the way everything, you know what I mean? The smoothness, reversing whips, all this stuff, the music, everything is awesome. But the number one, the best wrestling game series ever made, bar none, in my opinion, Fire Pro Wrestling, previously Six Man Scramble. Fire Pro Wrestling, the way to customize the wrestlers, the move set, the outfits, the ring apron, the mat, everything. Even in the arenas, people recreated the ECW arena, Hammerstein Ballroom. It's just, it can't be beat. That is the greatest wrestling game ever made.
I'm going to really upset you now. I've never played it. And there's so many of them. I've never played
on that.
I've never played any of them. Never played any of the Fire Pro wrestling games. I think the retro looking ones. Or am I going crazy here? I always thought it was what are the ones? I always thought it was Fire Pro where they got like really small looking characters, and the almost look like Mega Drive, sort of like
yeah, it is Fire Pro.
Yeah,
it's Fire Pro. It's almost 3/4 like a Diablo type thing, and the thing is, when you have tag teams, it takes a little while. Once again, you have to get the energy down. They also have exploding barbed wire matches that won a lot better than the AEW one. They have like you can do shoot fights like just MMA style. It's incredible. Where it really stands out, and this is where the Easter eggs come out, is when you do a tag match or a 6-man. Tag matches have tag team moves. They have the Road Warrior clothesline off the top rope. Also, 6-man, they have a thing where everybody gives forearms to the guy and beats him down and stuff. Just fun little things that are just awesome to be able to do. So whether you're doing building characters, creative wrestlers, it's just, and on Steam right now, you can do like the Fire promoter mode where if you want to do the sim based and run cards and stuff, you can get different packs. Like I've been considering buying either the base or buying everything where you get like the junior heavyweight tournament and all this other stuff. Just an immensely satisfying game.
Okay, but there are loads of different versions of Fire Pro, aren't there? So which do you think is the best, and what would you recommend for someone who wants to get into that line of games?
Well, the gameplay is almost all the same. Like it went from the Saturn, then Super Famicom and all that stuff, and now it's on Steam. Being on the Steam Deck and on Steam means the controllers are more easily mapped. So I would tell you to buy Pro Wrestling World, Fire Pro Wrestling World. Fire Pro Wrestling Returns was on the PS2 or 3 or maybe a 4, but then they updated that with Fire Pro Wrestling World. So Fire Pro Wrestling World would be the one I would get because it has the most up-to-date standard roster. It also has the Steam Workshop where you can get all the aprons and the character sets and all that stuff. I would just buy the newest one because the gameplay, to its credit, not detriment, has not changed throughout the years and decades.
Any honourable mentions that didn't quite make the top 5 that you want to mention here?
Well, Day of Reckoning 2. I wouldn't give it to WrestleMania 21 for Xbox. That was not good. You know what? I'm going to bring something up. It was very basic, but I owned this device and I owned this game. Do you remember the Nokia N-Gage?
Yes, which was the taco deal. Oh, they were terrible. Yeah. Do you know what that had on it was Pandemonium? If you remember that, it was like a 2.5D platform that was really good.
I actually have it. I think I have it on the emulator here.
Yeah.
So N-Gage, WWE Aftershock was a sleeper hit. It was being on the road and being able to game with something. The N-Gage was basically this. To be able to do that and also have a phone all in one, I think that's an honorable mention. I would also give it, like, Japanese-wise, they had a lot of games from Pro Wrestling Noah, like Wrestle Kingdom in 2006, King of Colosseum 2, all the New Japan Pro Wrestling from basically, my God, 1991 on the Game Boy, all the way up to, you had New Japan 2002 on Game Boy Advanced. Dude, I think there's more really good wrestling games out than bad ones. Like I'm looking at the list right now, and I'm not talking about the mobile games. I think honorable mention for the bad games are those mobile games with the microtransactions. I don't like those.
I've got a couple that I want to throw in there. Not that they're good games. My first wrestling game that I actually owned was WWF Royal Rumble on the Mega Drive, or Genesis for you, which was, what, 93? I think. I had that, and I can never work out how to pin. I always found it difficult. It had its charms and everything, but I can never really quite work out how to get to grips with it. And the other one was WCW Thunder, because, you could press circle. I had the PlayStation. You press circle on it, and then it'd have like a FMV of them doing a taunt at you. And I swear, and I'll guarantee no one will believe me on this, or few people will. So there's 38 wrestlers you can pick from. And the first person I picked was Kevin Nash. And it says something to the, hey, you can't pick me. You haven't got the mental whatever or the physical dexterity to pick me, so go and pick on someone else. Go pick Hogan or someone. Off you go. Bye. And then the next one I picked, right, was Roddy Piper. And and he was on the next 2 rows down, and I just happened to randomly pick him. And Piper goes, hey, I heard what Nash said. He says, don't pick him. Well, pick me instead. I thought, no way. All these videos interact with each other. It turns out none of them interact with each other. I just happened to pick the only 2 that would have made sense to play after one after another. And then, of course, there's Alex Wright, who goes, I'm Alex Wright, and the German. If you want to know what the Germans are about, pick me, and you'll have one hell of a victory. I promise. That was a meme.
I think people kind of know what the Germans were about at one point in world history. So.
Yeah. One of my greatest joys was quoting that verbatim to Alex Wright. I'm sorry, buddy, I've got to do it.
And you did the Jeff laugh.
I'm sorry. Haha, all right, I'll do that. I'll make you happy. I'll do the thing.
You won't make me happy with that. Damn, I didn't even know there's so many Fire Pro Wrestling games. I'm looking at
well, that's why I asked. There's tons of them. I saw one of them being advertised a couple of years ago.
I would go with the newest one. I would go with the newest one still. Here's 2 you might not know about that I would say get kind of an honorable mention. Def Jam Vendetta.
Never had it. Never had it.
Also, Rumble Roses XX, Rumble Roses 20. It had very much, you know what it had? That I'll kind of take away from that. Saturday Night Slam Masters. And here's another thing that was based off of Saturday Night Slam Masters, I can say. The Simpsons wrestling game.
Right. I remember that.
Saturday Night Slam Masters. I will take Rumble Roses off there because it was based on Saturday Night Slam Masters, and even that Simpsons wrestling game was pretty good.
You know how the Simpsons wrestling game could take 2 of the things I loved more than anything else in the world and make me hate them both. I remember that being awful.
I just think it's a fun day. But Saturday Night Slam Masters was pretty good at the time. Now, I think honorable mention on the bad side would have to be Backyard Wrestling. Don't try this at home from 2003.
Is that the one with New Jack and the porn star on the front?
I think so. No. This just has somebody diving off the roof to somebody through a table. Lots of bad games too. I have to say that there's really good games, but there's really bad games as well.
I mean, I do have to put Nitro and Thunder in that as well because they just stunk, those games, and I would play them to death as well. But what Thunder's got going for it, and I don't know if Nitro did, but Thunder certainly did, that there was a cheat that you could make all the wrestlers dance. So all the moves would just be ballroom swing dances instead. That was brilliant.
Sure. Oh, here's another one for you. Hey, would you like to play a game from 2023 on the PC, since it's a computer video game, as you say, called Casual Pro Wrestling?
Tell me more.
That's all I got. Casual Pro Wrestling.
Okay, then. Do you know, just before, because, right, we've got a few other things that we want to include in this. As I say, it's going to have to be a part 2 or will be included in another episode, so I won't spoil what we were going to ask and talk about with the gaming stuff. But you teased it for about an hour and a half now. The Memo story. So I don't know what this is. I'm looking forward to it. So what is the Memo story?
Well, for everybody to wait around for this, I hope and I think and believe you will not be disappointed. one of the games, I'm not sure exactly which one. It might be one of the SmackDown ones I was in because I was talking to the video game people, and a wrestler can back this up, and I won't mention his name, but I mentioned him before where he goes, Wacko. You can determine who that person is. There was a memo going around when we were promoting the video game. Matter of fact, it was when we were promoting the video game. There was a memo going around saying that Triple H cannot, under any circumstances, be shown in promotional materials, commercials, ads, screenshots, and gameplay in a vulnerable position or getting pinned. You know, you want to spend your time and resources on certain things when you run a company. And I don't think that's really something that should be in the top 10 or 100.
You're friends with Rene Dupree, aren't you?
Yes.
Did you ever hear his story when they were doing his leg measurements and such like that?
No, I have not.
Well, apparently, I don't know if he was getting measured for an outfit. I presume he was when he first came into the company. And the seamstress found out that maybe his legs, or he was taller, or his neck was bigger, or whatever it was bigger than Triple H's. And she actually had to alter the number so it would appear as less than Triple H's.
Why do we spend our energy on these things? I believe it. I believe it to the ends of the earth because of the Memo story and because of 100 other things. But you know what? Dude's a legend. Dude was a perennial main eventer. Dude runs the company. He's revered. So I guess Renee and I are the idiots for not paying attention to the things that are most important, like not looking vulnerable in a video game and making sure, at least on paper, you have the biggest quads in the company.
Absolutely. On that note, we will shut down the show. Take it away, Stevie.
Yeah, I want to thank everybody for this episode. We will do a part 2. Hopefully you enjoyed this. People were talking about a gaming channel. This gaming episode is kind of a dry run to see if it's something you want as a full-time thing. Want to thank our Patreon members, patreon.com/Stevie Richards. That is the cue for Chris to put the ticker below with all the Patreon supporters. Want to appreciate, we have a $1 tier, which is a thank you tier, but I am going to add how I make the Stevie Richards Show happen on this end, what we do, the editing, all that stuff for the $1 supporters. That will be coming up very shortly or soon, whichever you prefer. And also, we have an $8 producer tier. They get pre and post show content and also recorded production meetings. We just had one with Chris. Everybody really likes what Chris is doing and what we're doing. Also, dedicated breakdown videos of full matches are going to go up on a monthly or more basis. I like to underpromise and over-deliver. And anytime we have something that happens, like the thing with the isolated audio, if I solve that, I'm going to put it up on Patreon and share it with the supporters. So patreon.com/Stevie Richards. More importantly, James has 2 books, The Rock and Old Hard.
So on that basis, everybody, thank you so much for joining us. We will see you again. We're out every single Friday with a new episode. A new clip goes on the YouTube channel pretty much every day, I think. And before I ramble on too much, and this recording is just ticking over to 3 hours now, thank you very much, and we'll see you again next Friday.